We did it. We did it. I'm going to tell you guys up front right away. I am flipping tired. Tried to get to sleep last night. Tried to, be an adult. Get to sleep at a reasonable hour. Get a good night's sleep. Just didn't happen. Just didn't happen. I mean, I did blink out eventually, but I feel like the horror is what's killing me. Hey, Nanya, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. I feel like I'm caught in, the horror, right? I'm caught in, it's really obvious what's happening. It's really, really obvious what's happening. And yet, we are just, I just feel like I'm surrounded by people in a burning building, and I'm like, let's get out of the burning building. And they're just like, there is no burning building. This is fine. Right? It's like that little dog, right? The this is fine dog. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? This guy? The this is fine fired dog. This guy? Yes. This is what it is to be a millennial these days. This is the meme that encapsulates what it is to be alive in this society. And it's just it's brutal. It's truly brutal. And what's so gross about it is that we are, not only are we not trying to solve the problem, we are literally doing everything we can to make the problem worse while lying about it. It's really gross. It's really gross. I've got a couple articles here I'll be reading out loud that are exactly along this line. So you guys are in here and you're coming in with your numbers already. For some reason, and I don't know why, David Lynch didn't do the number pull today. So I'm going to do the number pull myself without Mr. David Lynch. I hope he's well. I hope he's okay. I don't know what's going on that end, but such is life, right? You can't win them all. And so I've got my number generator. We got a number from 1 to 10. If you're in the chat, we've got Pissed Off Canadian. How you doing today, bud? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. We got a 2. We got a 10. I'm going to choose a 5 because I got my 5 here. We got a 7 for Mocked. All right. Let's do it the way that Mr. Lynch would do it, right? 10 balls. Each ball has a number. Pick a number. Swirl the numbers. The number is 7. Mocked, it hit. It finally hit. Oh, I know, buddy. It was me. I know. Who's this strange voice clapping? You did it, Mocked. You did it. You hit the number, the divine number. The Google gods, with the blessing of Mr. Lynch. I hope he is well out in the world. Hits you with the 7, the divine number, no less. So, here we go. All right, guys. I love the number draw, man. It's so fun. Such a fun way to start the show. Donald, of course, laying it out. Year in, year out, you bring grief on yourselves, all for the sake of getting rich, staying rich, or getting richer still. You'll never be happy because you always worry about what you'll do next to complicate your own greedy lives. Yep. It's just laying out some truth. And this comic's probably from 1945 or something, right? You can't see these sorts of statements anymore, right? You can't make a comment on power and greed in the society anymore. That's why all of our art sucks. It's just meaningless drivel. Can you imagine Tony Stark, like Superman, like even Donald Duck today. Like, can you imagine them making a statement like that? No, of course not. Because that would require the understanding that greed is bad and that the accumulation of greed has consequences. Or the accumulation of mass wealth has consequences. So we just live in this trash society that refuses to actually, make meaningful comments about anything whatsoever. From the Maple, right? From the Maple. The powerful oil and gas executives opposing Canada's climate commitments. According to data from the OECD, Canada is the only G7 nation to have increased greenhouse gas emissions over the past 6 years. This is by Jeremy Apple. Petroleum is like a genie, writes journalist Peter Foster in his 1979 book, The Blue-Eyed Sikhs, The Canadian Oil Establishment. Hunched in infinite blackness, often miles below the surface of the earth, it offers both wealth and power to those who can release it by pricking its cage of rock. But the beast is strangely formed and strangely found. The genie's bounty, quite literally, fuels the modern world. A recent report from the Federal Environment Commissioner, Jerry DeMarco, suggests that when it comes to shaping Canada's climate policy, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is enraptured by this genie. We can't continue to go from failure to failure, DeMarco wrote in his scathing report. We need action and results, not just more targets and plans. Between 2005 and 2019, Canada's greenhouse gas emissions dropped by 1.1%. But since Trudeau came to power in 2015, they've increased. According to data from the OECD, Canada is the only G7 nation to have increased emissions over the past 6 years. DeMarco cited in particular the Liberal government's decision to purchase the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion project in 2018, which will nearly triple the pipeline's capacity to transport tar sands crude, as an example of policy incoherence with progress towards climate commitments. The Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, the main arm of Canada's oil lobby, has been full-throated in support of expanding Canadian oil production, including the Trans Mountain Project, in addition to promoting a more laissez-faire approach to emissions reductions. CAP's membership includes major players such as Imperial Oil, Canadian Natural Resources Limited, Cenovus, Suncor, Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Shell. Last month, a report found that Canada's 8th largest oil and gas producers plan to expand production by 30% over the next decade, leading to a 25% increase in carbon emissions. Who are the key players behind these powerful forces stymieing Canada's climate commitments? Brad Corson, CEO and President of Imperial Oil. In 1947, Canadian oil supplied just 10% of Canada's needs, with the vast majority coming from the US and Venezuela. That changed, Foster writes, after Imperial Oil, in a mood of virtual desperation, stumbled across a gusher at Leduc, a discovery which gave birth to the modern Alberta oil and gas industry. The next year, Don Lougheed joined the company, rising to the ranks of executive vice president and director in 1976. Don's brother Peter was the premier of Alberta from 1971 to 1985. The company's current president and CEO, Brad Corson, was appointed in January 2020. Born in Woodstock, Illinois, Corson began his career in New Orleans with Exxon, which today owns about 70% of Imperial Oil, in 1983. By 2009, he was appointed vice president for the ExxonMobil production company, where he was responsible for oil and gas production in Europe and the Caspian Sea, and served in other executive roles that led to acquisitions in the Permian Basin, Papua New Guinea, Mozambique, and Brazil. Corson serves on the board of directors of CAP, as well as the influential C.D. Howe Institute, a right-leaning think tank. In March 2020, Corson, whose annual salary is a reported $2.94 million, vowed to cut spending at the company by $1 billion. 8 months later, he oversaw 200 layoffs, promising further efficiencies going forward. In the third quarter of 2021, Imperial reported $908 million in profit, compared with the $3 million during the same period in 2020, with production increasing to 435,000 barrels per day from 365,000 the year prior. In the second quarter of 2021, Imperial shareholders voted overwhelmingly against adopting a net zero emissions target for 2050, with Corson calling such commitment premature. In November, the city of Calgary, where Imperial has been headquartered since 2004, voted to declare a climate emergency, which included a commitment to net zero emissions by 2050. Al Monaco, CEO and President of Enbridge. Enbridge is a pipeline company, not an oil and gas production company. It owns 28,661 kilometers of active crude pipelines across North America, with 14,965 kilometers in the U.S. and 13,696 kilometers in Canada, delivering in excess of 3 million barrels of oil per day. Al Monaco, who joined the company in 1995, has been its CEO and director since 2012. He oversaw a $37 billion acquisition of Spectra Energy in 2017, which expanded Enbridge's U.S. presence and natural gas holdings. In 2019, he received an award from the Fraser Institute, a right-wing think tank, at a tribute dinner for his contribution to what event MC Andrew Judson called our most pressing ongoing battle, getting Alberta's resources to market. In 2020, Monaco was the top-earning Calgary executive with a pay package of more than $17 million, a 15% cut from 2019. While the average Alberta wage increased by 2.5% last year, for oil and gas workers, it fell by 4.4%, the Calgary Herald's Bill Kaufman noted. Monaco considers Enbridge's natural gas holdings to be a bridge towards renewable energy sources, a view widely debunked by experts, and insists the transition must occur slowly with a combination of balanced policy solutions. Norman Murray Edwards, Executive Chairman of CNRL. According to Forbes, CNRL Executive Chairman Norman Murray Edwards, who has a net worth of $2.1 billion, began his career by setting up a merchant bank with partners in the 1980s. But they spend half their initial capital on digging a natural gas well that came up dry. This experience spurred Edwards to move from oil and gas exploration to purchasing existing assets. In addition to CNRL, Edwards owns the aerospace firm Magellan and Vancouver-based mining companies Imperial Metals. He is also a minority owner of the Calgary Flames. Edwards is not afraid to throw his money around. In 2013, Edwards held a $1 million fundraiser to support then BC Liberal Premier Christy Clark's free enterprise government. Edwards is connected to 6 corporations that donate a total of $436,227 in campaign contributions to the BC Liberal Party from 2005 to 2013, more than a third of which came from CNRL, the Vancouver Sun reported. The collapse of a tailings dam from the Imperial Metals-owned Mount Poly mine in 2014 leaked billions of liters of waste into Poly Lake, Hazelton Creek, and Quensel Lake. Its cleanup was publicly funded to the tune of $40 million. Edwards switched his primary residence to London, England in 2016 after the Alberta NDP government increased taxes on high-income earners. This meant he could not live in Canada for more than half the year. Last year, he moved from London to St. Moritz, Switzerland, a ski resort town. He earned $13.56 million in 2020, exclusively from stock options and incentives, the Calgary Herald reported. Edwards hails from Regina. In 2007, the University of Saskatchewan renamed its College of Commerce the N. Murray Edwards School of Business, acknowledging Edwards' long-standing relationship with the University of Saskatchewan's Business School as a student, alumnus, and donor. Mark Little, CEO and president of Suncor. Suncor president and CEO Mark Little joined the company's board in 2008, overseeing its $15 billion U.S. merger with Petro-Canada, providing the fatal blow to Canada's previously more economically nationalist energy policy. The end of Petro-Canada as an independent company would eliminate the last vestige of an ambitious and highly controversial program started by former Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau during the 1970s to assert Canadian control over the country's energy resources, the New York Times reported at the time. Through this arrangement, the two companies targeted $1.3 billion in annual savings, which resulted in the layoffs of 2,000 workers in 2010. Prior to Suncor, Little worked for 23 years at Imperial Oil, chaired Syncrude, and served in the Royal Canadian Air Force. He also sits on CAP's board of directors, serving as a member for the Oil Sands CEO Council. In June 2020, Little was named Resources of the Future Chair on the Government of Canada's Industry Strategy Council for COVID Recovery, which is designed to create a synergy between the private and public sectors to address urgent challenges and impediments to growth. He takes home an annual pay of $1.66 million. Little suggested in July 2021 that the Canadian government will have to pay 2/3 of the $75 billion cost of the carbon capture technology he claims will allow oil producers to reach net zero by 2050. Hal Caviezel, ARC Resources chairman, Cenovus board member, and former CEO of Talisman and TransCanada. Hal Caviezel opened up the Keystone Pipeline the day before he retired as the CEO and president of TransCanada in the summer 2010. That pipeline, which was the inspiration for the ill-fated Keystone XL pipeline, carries up to 590,000 barrels per day of Western Canadian crude oil from Hardisty, Atlanta, to refineries in Wood River and Patoka, Illinois, and Cushing, Oklahoma. Caviezel's retirement was short-lived, however. He became the president and CEO of Talisman Energy 2 years later. Caviezel oversaw Talisman's 2015 acquisition by Spanish companies Repsol for $15 billion US, which he called regrettable, while promising a headcount reduction. The same year, Talisman laid off 200 employees, but a spokesperson insisted those were the result of the oil price crash. Since 2009, Caviezel has sat on the board of directors of ARC Resources, where he's currently chairman, and has been board of director at Cenovus since 2018. Caviezel began his career at Dome Petroleum in 1975 as an engineer, then started Fletcher Challenge Energy Canada in 1988, serving as its president. At Fletcher, Caviezel led the expansion of the company's Canadian holdings, as well as those in Venezuela, Argentina, and Mexico. He joined TransCanada in 1999, becoming president and CEO 2 years later. There are a handful of high-profile Canadian oil and gas executives who have shaped not only the future of the industry, but also the public's perception of it, reads Caviezel's entry at the Canadian Petroleum Hall of Fame. But there are many, many more who have done as much or more with little of the attention or glamour lauded on the superstars. Hal Caviezel is one of those. In 2011, Caviezel received the Fraser Institute Founders Award. In his acceptance speech, he called the neoliberal think tank a great Canadian institution, and accused environmentalists of spreading misinformation and hyperbole. It's important that industry leaders highlight regulatory excesses and work with agencies and governments to peel back regulation to what is really needed, not what activists demand, he said, blaming Canada's state of over-regulation on environmentalists who are genuinely worried about things that are not really cause for concern. Caviezel called Trudeau's appointment this year of former environmental activist Stephen Guilbeault as Minister of Environment and Climate Change a direct shot in the eye. To pick Guilbeault as the Environment Minister, you might as well pick David Suzuki and just make it very clear to us what they think of us, he told Post Media. Caviezel sat on the board of Nature Conservancy of Canada since 2007. Jeremy Apple is a journalist based in Calgary, and his work has appeared in The Sprawl, CBC Calgary, Jacobin, Passage, and The Forward. He also co-hosts The Forgotten Corner and Big Shiny Takes podcasts. These are the people that we need to arrest. Every one of them. Norman Murray, Caviezel, Brad Corson, all of these people should be arrested and put on trial in a climate change tribunal. Justin Trudeau should join them, given his complete and total fealty and allegiance to them. We are the only OECD nation that has increased emissions, while simultaneously declaring a climate change emergency. This is utterly fraudulent behavior. This is complicit, overt, evil, as bad, if not worse, than the Nazis, because even the Nazis weren't interested in destroying all human life. These people, and the reason why I read this, was so that we can put a name, so that we can actually put names to the people who should be arrested, rounded up, and tried for their treason against Canada, for their many crimes, their environmental crimes, as they literally tell us, sure, breathable air, water, all of those things, but money, you guys. Like, I should be able to kill your children for money. This is literally the argument that's being put in front of us. That's literally what they are saying to us. That is their actual argument. Or it's just deluded madmen like Caviezel who are saying like, oh, it's not really a problem, right? It's not really a problem for him because he'll be dead by the time this all starts to happen, right? Like, he's fine with putting landmines all over the place because he's not going to walk where those landmines have been placed. Very, very straightforward psychopathic behavior. These are the members of the death cult. These people are caught in a hysteria. At the beginning of this article, Jeremy writes, a recent report from Federal Environment Commission Derry DeMarco suggests that when it comes to shaping Canada's climate policy, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is enraptured by this genie. He's caught in a mass hysteria. That's what it is. That we are in a mass hysteria where swindlers and con men and deluded psychopaths are genuinely arguing in front of us that we should sacrifice the foundation of our existence on the planet for something we invented and made up in the first place. We have to snap out of this mass hysteria. We have to arrest Brad Corson, Al Monaco, Norman Murray Edwards, Mark Little, Hal Caviezel, and Justin Trudeau, and put them on trial for their many crimes against us. Because we will pay for their actions. We will pay for it. The BC flooding is just the beginning. The burning down of Lytton is just the beginning. These people have committed massive treason against us. Enormous treason against us. While simultaneously lying directly to our faces and pretending like they were actually doing something about it. All the while actively increasing emissions and actively deceiving us. These people are treasonous criminals. We should arrest them. Very straightforward. Very straightforward. And I don't even think that this is I don't even think this even approaches hyperbole. Right? Ask the people of British Columbia if they think that that's hyperbolic. Right? Ask the people of Lytton if they think that that's hyperbolic. Like, are we going to wait until the wildfires get Kamloops? Are we going to wait until the wildfires start coming into our major cities? Seems like. What are you guys talking about? What's on the agenda? Anyone else see the sun, feel the wind, and are yet empty inside? There is a communist lobby, since money is money. Hey John, remember that stupid video I made you play last week where I said apocalypses are fake? It's over 250 views. I mean, good for you, Rob. Congratulations, bud. Climate change is going to burn our shit down, dude. You keep walking around telling people that apocalypses are fake, right? Just contribute to the hysteria. That's fine. Every time a house is made, it comes with a solar panel. Bam. Such geniuses are smart. Oop. I'm so popular. Socialist action. I don't know what to tell these guys. Like, I work. Like, I'm here. Like, I'm not. I can't come to their stuff. Anyway. No, I don't. I'm tired, man. I'm tired. I didn't sleep well last night at all. It's like the movie Casino with the O&G industry. You can't get rid of their impediments because they're juiced in. Try to take these entities to task and you'll be brought down. No re-election. I mean, you guys know me. Like, surround the halls of power. Like, electoral politics has failed. And it's failed for a very clear and obvious reason. Right? Billionaires can buy it. Like, we allowed billionaires to exist, and they can just buy the political system, and they have. All their political enablers should stand trial. At this point, this includes the NDP. I mean, certainly Horgan, right? Like, certainly Horgan. His, he's as fraudulent as the rest of them. Like, what, and like, to me, I actually have more respect for the politicians that are that aren't bullshitting about it, that aren't lying, like the conservative types, right? The guys that are just like, yeah, well, whatever, fuck it, money, right? Like that I look at and I go like, oh yeah, okay, like you're, evil, without a doubt, but at least you're not lying to me about it, like the liberals do, right? And like it's got to be it's got to be stated, like the people who are voting liberal now are like what you would be doing if you lived in Nazi Germany. Like, what you would be doing. You would be voting Nazis. That's what you would be doing. Like, very, very, very straightforwardly. Like, you're if you're voting liberal, you're not a good person. Like, you're simply not a good person. You're not even trying to be a good person. You're literally voting for frauds and liars who are actively seeking to destroy you. Like, that's the most embarrassing part about it, is that if you're voting liberal, you're actively voting for people who are destroying you. And I mean, I can't trust a person who's that incompetent, who's so stupid that they vote for their own destruction, right? Like, and don't pretend like that's not happening. Like, that's exactly what's happening. You are actively voting for your own destruction and the destruction of your own children. Like, and you expect to be taken credibly as an individual. You expect to be taken credibly as like a thinker. You think your opinion matters? Like, get fucking bent. Get bent. Stop voting liberal. Come to your senses. Like, come to your senses. These guys are betraying. If Justin Trudeau was a friend of yours, you would have dumped that friend forever ago. Forever ago, right? Like, imagine having a friend that just constantly lied to you. Like, constantly lied to you. Everything they said, literally everything they said, was a total lie. And this includes, like, major shit. Like, you'd ask them, like, hey, can you pick up my kids from school? And they'd be like, yeah, for sure, I've got it. And then they just don't. And it's not because they couldn't. It's just because they are like, what are you gonna do? And then you just keep this person in your life. You keep asking them to do things. You keep trusting them. Why? Why? Like, so whether you're completely complicit with the liberals, where you're just lying to yourself and other people around you, or whether it's just because you're dumb, right? If you're still voting liberal, you're an untrustworthy person, contributing to one of the worst political organizations that has ever existed. And I mean that. Like, that has ever existed. And it's not hyperbolic to say that. What other groups throughout human history have actively attempted to destroy the species for fucking money? Like, it's an embarrassment. And the support of this party is a fucking embarrassment. Like, stop voting. Like, for real. If you look at the conservatives and the liberals and the NDP and you go like, well, I don't know who to vote for, then stop voting. Stop participating. Like, you're not helping. You're fucking not helping. Quit, abandon these guys. I don't know why that's hard for people to understand. Like, they are actively fucking us over. Even under mercantilism in feudal Europe, capitalism needs to be regulated. After a series of bad harvests and winters, and after Louis the 16th regulated the French economy, the price of a simple loaf of bread became a month's pay. Yeah. No, I mean, like, this is the result of free market capitalism, right? That eventually a small group of people hoard all the resources, flip the rest of us off, manufacture scarcity, which is what they're doing, right? Manufacture scarcity, and if you go and die, they don't care. Like, they don't care. Why would they care? Maxwell Day, oh yeah, the Maxwell Day number 9 trial was boring. One DA was sick the day prosecution were bringing their final and most expansive witness. Yeah. Massive billionaire pedo cult goes on. Like, I mean, what do you think's going to happen with that trial, dude? Like, it's gonna fizzle. Like, it's not going to result in anything. Like, maybe Maxwell herself will go to prison, but, like, they're not going to, like, arrest Donald Trump. Like, they're not going to, like, arrest Prince Andrew. Like, that's not going to happen, right? Like, we're way too cowardly to do that as a people, right? Like, way too cowardly to do that. I went to KFC today, was shocked by the size of the pieces of chicken. Tiny. Shrinkflation is getting carried away. Yeah. But money, John. Yeah, bud. It's all about the money. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. The people in my basic income group got mad because most of them were liberals, so they told me off and left the group. Yeah. I find that that's true with, like, the basic income people. It's like they're basically liberals, and they're not willing to do what needs to be done to actually get involved. Yeah. Well, and what's embarrassing about this statement, granny guys, like, I don't vote for evil even if it's the lesser one. Like, vote NDP, vote Green, right? If only to give a shot across the bow on these guys. Like, why aren't you swinging over to at least the NDP? Oh, is it because there's a guy in a turban leading the party? Oh, it probably has something to do with the turban. Like, we're a very racist people. Hey, Just JC, how you doing, bud? Yeah, at this point, liberal and conservative are synonymous. Yeah, they actually are. Like, they might as well be the same party. Like, and I'll say it again and again and again, right? Stephen Harper was a better prime minister than Justin Trudeau, by a really, really wide margin. Like, it's not actually even close. Like, and I think one of the major differences between the Harper administration and the Trudeau administration is that Harper didn't bullshit you. Like, people said to him, like, hey, do you think climate change is an issue? Like, do you think like environment, this thing is an issue? And he just kind of shrugged and went, that's a problem for my grandchildren, right? Like, he didn't fucking bullshit anybody. He didn't like say like, oh yeah, we need to look out for climate change and all those things that I don't actually believe in or care about. For sure, yeah, please vote for me. Like, he wasn't saying that. You know, we got the child care benefit out of Stephen Harper's administration, right? What's Trudeau done? Like, oh, we got a plant. Yeah, that plant that got banned, guys. That we were all smoking anyway. Yeah, I've always wondered why people nonchalantly say I voted for the lesser of two evils. Well, and like it's especially American politics is reverted to just base tribalism. Like it really is just like pick your team. That's what I see, right? Like I see two equally repugnant groups who have both sold out to corporate power completely, attempting to convince a populace that either one of them have any moral ground to stand on whatsoever. And the people who support like the Democrats will hold up some like measly little success that's like so pathetic and pedantic that you're like, really? Like this is the barrel you're scraping against? You're scraping this like completely irrelevant like shift. And like then you go over to the Republicans and they're doing exactly the same thing. Oh yeah, we got this minor measly nonsense bullshit. Who gives a fuck? And like if the reality of the situation in the United States is that the Democrats are fine if the Republicans take power. Like that's the reason why they're not actually doing stuff, right? Because they don't actually care as like a political entity if the Republicans take power, right? If they were genuinely worried about these Republicans, right? And if they were genuinely worried about like the Republicans seizing power, they would be doing everything they could to be making inroads with people in Republican areas, or at least in flip-flop areas, right? To do what? Improve their material conditions, right? But they're not interested in that. They're not interested in that at all. And the reality is that if the Republicans come in and sweep in, right, the Democrats will just be like, okay. Because they work for the same people, right? They're running a collective grift on the populace. They work together. And it's heartbreaking to see people still try to pretend like the Democrats are somehow superior to the Republicans, like as if they have like a moral high ground. And it's just like, no, you sincerely do not. Like you sincerely do not. Like both groups are fascists. Like they work for corporate power exclusively, and they tell the populace to get stuffed. Like what do you need? Yeah, those who say that X is a threat to Canada, climate change, 87%, future pandemics, 87%, cyber attacks from nations, 86%, China as a world power, 84%. Yeah, Canadians are sheep, dude. Like, we really are. Like, how is China actually a threat? Like, really? What has it done? That's the question I keep asking these people. Like, what have they actually done? Like, really? And really, when you start to dig into that, and it's without exception when I start talking to people, it just comes down to base xenophobia. They're just like, oh, they're big, and they're strong, and they're not white. Basically. If they shrinkflate my cans of beer, it's war. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a losing strategy generally. Yeah, I regularly turn in nearly empty ballots. Yeah. Vote conservative. Maybe then the liberals will actually do something to win your vote. No, don't vote. Don't vote conservative. Like that's like shooting yourself in the foot to get revenge on your other foot. Like, vote NDP. Vote Green. Vote Communist. Stop fucking pretending like either of those parties are going to help you. I've never been so depressed until I started watching many videos of the homeless from the U.S., from Los Angeles to New Jersey. Yeah. Now I've become convinced that the emperor has no clothes. Yeah. Like, I mean, you know it's bad when you can just, like, walk down the street. Right? Like, these issues that we're talking... Like, here in Toronto, like, Toronto's being hollowed out. Like, it's being completely hollowed out. That nobody is going to live in the downtown core very, very much longer. and all it's going to be is like Airbnbs, and like it's going to just be riddled with crime and all kinds of bullshit because no one will actually live there, and it's just being hollowed out from the inside out. Like it's very biblical what's happening. Like there's a biblical quality to it, like a real like Sodom and Gomorrah sort of feeling about it. And like we're just allowing our cities to become husks, and just sold to a billionaire class that is abandoning us, and we're just like, okay, yeah, well, what are you gonna do, liberal? Like, we're a very embarrassing people, like very embarrassing. We literally could just not vote for these guys, and like send a message to the political class that we will abandon you. And we should abandon them. And it's shocking to me that we're not. Like, it's shocking to me that we're not. Like, we could very easily pivot over to literally any other party, right? But we're just too gullible and cowardly to do that. A lot of times it takes a Republican to pass a Democratic priority and vice versa. Think NAFTA, yeah, and the medical drug bill, yeah. Well, they work together, right? They work together. I vote NDP, although disappointed they moved to the center after Leighton, removed all mention of socialism from their platform. Yeah, they got taken over. And they got Leighton with the cancer gun, right? Yeah, pretty interesting timing on that, eh? No, like this is one of these things that I say, and I'll be explicit. I don't have like a source document, right? I don't have like a CSIS or a CIA thing. But like, interesting timing. Like, literally, the guy has, like, an orange sweep happen, right? In 4 years' time, it's very, very likely that he's going to become the elected leader of Canada. And it just so happens that right around that time, he dies of cancer. Pretty convenient. Pretty convenient. It's like Hugo Chavez, right? Like, people in Venezuela say of Hugo Chavez that he was assassinated, right? Because they got him with a gun that fucking stopped his heart. Well, you think they don't have those? Like, I'm not voting NDP anymore. I'm not going to vote for 2022, and whenever the next election is, I'm tired of failure in both campaigning and policy making centrism. Yeah, vote communist. What has China done? Non-market practices. In steel, they built overcapacity, which destroyed the steel market, but they don't care because they needed the steel. Yeah, but that's not a threat. Right? That just makes rich people less money. And they will keep the deposit at 10 cents. Yeah. The only time I will vote for an NDP is if they run for mayor. That is it. I'd be happy to be an NDP mayor of Toronto instead of right-wing John Tory. Well, I mean, my view of Tory is that he was actually doing a fine job. Like, I didn't agree with his policies, but at least they were, like, reasonable. Like, I understood where he was coming from. And he was suggesting interesting stuff. Like, he was suggesting, like, a toll on the 401, right? Which I think is necessary and should happen, right? But like, his clearing of the encampments is the end of him, right? He should resign. He should no longer be the mayor of this city. Like, literally, like you do the number crunching even. Like, the guy spent $20,000 a homeless person in order to clear them out, while simultaneously standing around saying that he's trying to alleviate poverty or homelessness. I'm literally like, $20,000 give to homeless person. Like, it doesn't take a fucking genius to figure this shit out. It really doesn't. Like, and it just speaks to sort of the dark heart of the death cult, right? Like, they're happy to pay more for these outcomes. They're happy to pay more to ensure that there's homeless people that they can beat up with police. They're happy to do that. Yeah, overcapacity is the worst thing that can happen to a capitalist economy. It destroys profits. Yeah, having too much of something, right? Like, it's like if something is freely available, then you can't charge for it, right? So you have to manufacture scarcity, which is what they're doing. So it's why they throw out all the food. It's why they do all this kind of stuff, right? It's why everything is like this. Because they know that, like, if food was just so available, that, like, then they wouldn't be able to overcharge for it, right? And gouge people the way that they do and walk away with billions of dollars in profits doing it. Coastal GasLink could face $1 million fines for repeated environmental infractions. I mean, you guys know me. Fines are just the bottom of it. Like, the people responsible for this should have all of their assets stripped. Like, they should be removed from the society completely. They should have zero influence. They should have zero assets. They should have zero liquidity. They should live in a prison cell, and that is where they should die. Fuck this idea that, oh, we'll just fine them. Like, no. We should put them in the basement of the worst prison that we have and forget about them. That's what we should do. Coastal GasLink could face $1 million fines for repeated environmental infractions. BC's Environmental Assessment Office has issued 11 orders to Coastal GasLink since the project began, including 3 in November. This is by Matt Simmons from In the Narwhal. Jerry cans of gas in an overflowing pool of water. Oil barrels lying on the ground. A dumpster filled to the brim, its lid propped open and bags of garbage left out in bare country. Murky waters flowing into wetlands, lakes, streams, and rivers. These are the scenes from the route of the Coastal GasLink pipeline, as documented by provincial inspectors. All of this, including impacts to watercourses, their beds and banks not properly restored after workers cleared the land in preparation for laying pipe, violates the terms of its project approval, adding to a growing list of 11 non-compliance orders issued by BC's Environmental Assessment Office since construction on the project began in 2019, including 3 new orders issued in November. Collectively, the enforcement orders reveal a pattern of Coastal GasLink failing to abide by the rules of the pipeline project's environmental permits, despite the repeated written warnings and orders. At one site, inspectors found willows were planted to revegetate cleared banks, but the willow stakes were too small and planted too shallow, limiting their chance at survival. The willow stakes had more than 25 centimeters left exposed, and the planting rate of 1 stem per 15 meters was not often met. Inspectors stated in a report dated September 23, 2021. That laid out their concerns about environmental infractions along the pipeline's right-of-way. The inspectors recommended an administrative penalty, which could mean daily fines of up to $750,000 for everyday infractions are not addressed, according to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. In the coming weeks, the ministry will determine whether a penalty is necessary, or if additional information is needed, and then give Coastal GasLink another chance to respond to its findings and any proposed penalty. Like, you see how weak we are, right? You see how weak this sounds. Like, I'm literally reading this being like, this is some weak, limp, like, absolute bullshit. Like, what are you talking about? You give them a piece of paper saying comply or jail. Like, stop fucking around. Stop fucking around with these overt, obvious, psychopathic criminals. Matters of non-compliance are taken very seriously, as evidenced by the recent orders that include taking the additional step of recommending an administrative penalty for continued non-compliance. The Ministry of Environment told the Narwhal in an emailed statement. While Coastal GasLink, owned by TC Energy, largely admitted to errors in responses to the inspections throughout the report, it also disputed whether it needed to do everything outlined by inspectors, arguing that some of it was optional and not mandatory. As willow staking is an optional mitigation intended to help promote new growth along a reclaimed watercourse bank, Coastal GasLink argues that any use of willow staking, which it adheres to the typical guidance or not, is more beneficial than no willow staking. Like, why are we talking about willow staking? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I can't believe this is even being published, honestly. Like, for fuck's sake. These guys are like mass polluters. Like, they're literally coming into our house and just belching out garbage. And we're like, willow staking. Like, what the fuck? The Coastal GasLink pipeline, if completed, would transport 2.1 billion cubic feet of natural gas daily, with capacity to expand to 5 billion cubic feet per day, from sources in BC's northeast to the LNG Canada facility currently under construction on Haisla territory in Kitimat. On November 9th, 9 days before RCMP units began arresting Wet'suwet'en land defenders on Gidimt'en Clan territory in northwest BC, the province's Environmental Assessment Office issued 3 more non-compliance orders to Coastal GasLink related to the September 23rd report. Like, do you know what's going to happen if you find these guys, right? They're just going to turn around to the federal government, whinge about it, and get a bailout. Like, that's what's going to happen. That if the province actually fines these guys, like actually gives them the fine, right? They're just going to turn to Justin Trudeau and just get a fucking buyout. Like, that's what's going to happen. So, like, stop pretending like these fines matter at all. Like, it's actually quite embarrassing. Like, these guys should already be in jail for their many crimes and their overt lies to us. This idea that they're going to care at all about a fine, like, shut up. Like, it's childish. Like, it's childish to believe that this matters at all. Slato Molly Wickham, a wing chief of Cass Yick's House and Gidimt'en Camp spokesperson, said the company's history of environmental infractions is a key part of why Gidimt'en members and supporters are committed to preventing the company from drilling under the Wet'suwet'en Quay Morris River. When the company cleared land in late September in preparation for drilling and laying pipe under the river, Wickham and supporters occupied the Coastal GasLink drill site. Land defenders, acting under the authority of Denizé, Chief Wu of Cass Yick House, held the location for 50 days before enforcing an eviction order first issued by the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs on January 4th, 2020, triggering a chain of events that led to the arrests of more than 30 land defenders, supporters, and journalists. We have the ability to drink water right out of our river, Wickham told the Narwhal in an interview days before being arrested. We cannot afford for Wet'suwet'en Quay to be destroyed. Elected Chief Maureen Luggy and councillors Karen Ogden and Heather Newski of the Wet'suwet'en First Nations, one of 5 Wet'suwet'en band councils of the 22,000 square kilometer territory, have said that those opposed to the project do not speak for all Wet'suwet'en people. We want to make it absolutely clear that the actions of a few members of the Gidimt'en clan who claimed to evict Coastal GasLink and the RCMP from the headwaters of the Morris River do not represent the collective views of the clan or most of the Wet'suwet'en people, they wrote in a public statement on November 14th. The chief and councillors represent about 140 community members, roughly half of whom live on reserve west of Burns Lake. But it was not immediately clear how project supporters view Coastal GasLink's environmental infractions. The Narwhal reached out to the chief and council, but did not receive a response prior to publication. As journalism professor Candace Callison told the Narwhal in September, it's vital to remember that all communities, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, rarely agree on an issue unanimously. There has to be more spaces for dissent within Indigenous communities, she said. In BC politics, there's so much room for dissent within the NDP party, within the BC Liberals, and yet somehow Indigenous people have to package themselves for mainstream narratives as if there's no dissent within. Inspections of Coastal GasLink flagged pollutants, garbage, and project-related impacts to watersheds. Like, yeah, these guys are shitbag polluters, like we know. Like okay. It's a huge article. I'm too tired to fucking finish this article. Like, for fuck's sake. Like, stop polluting. Like, stop polluting. I understand that there's a small group of psychopaths who think that polluting is completely fine. And who have absolutely no respect for the earth or for the world that we live in because money, right? Gotta go for the kill. Gotta go for the kill. You know? And they are going for the kill. And what they're trying to kill is all of us. Company behind pink delivery robots to temporarily pull devices off Toronto sidewalks. So, I'm sure you've seen these around, these like little tiny mile boxes, right? So, Toronto City Council will vote next week on whether to ban devices that run on anything but muscle power from bike lanes, sidewalks, and pedestrian ways. I am 100% of the opinion that all of this automated garbage needs to go the fuck away. That we need to take all of it and put it in a fucking bin. I am absolutely not okay with this. I am not okay with those little fucking robot dogs. I'm not okay with these little fucking things zipping about, right? I am not okay at all with any of that. I am of the opinion that if you see any of these automated things running around, it is your civic duty to destroy them. You have not only the right, but the responsibility to destroy these things. They should not be taking up any room in our society whatsoever. Our streets are already ruined with the stupid cars and all this garbage, right? And now you're telling me all our pedestrian spaces are going to get even smaller, that our living spaces in the public sector are going to get even smaller because we're going to be jamming them up with this automated garbage? No. No. It's your civic duty to destroy these if you see them, right? If you see one, you should take it upon yourself to destroy it, and you are right to do so. Get rid of these fucking things. And same story with these fucking drones. Same story with all this shit. No. Get them out of here. They don't belong. They should not be part of our society. They should not be part of how we arrange anything whatsoever. Get them the fuck away. Goodbye. Farewell. And the people who are attempting to push it forward are literally just con men who obviously they want to be able to deliver stuff with robots so that they don't have to hire staff, right? They literally want it to be like a robot in a warehouse just putting something in another robot so that the robot can go be a robot. And in the meantime, if you're trying to live in the world and have an enjoyable experience, now you're going to be stepping all around these stupid fucking things, right? And it's just starting now. So everyone's going to be like, oh, John, it's so you're talking crazy, right? It's not so bad. It's just like a robot every so often. Yeah, wait until there's 1,000 of these things, right? Just zipping down young, right? Wait until there's 1,000 of these things going all over the place, right? Wait until there's 10,000 of these things, right? Zipping all over the place, delivering shit to people, right? Just you fucking wait, right? And these things aren't being driven around by a person or any of this kind of stuff, and they don't give a fuck. They can't give a fuck. They are going to be a massive problem, and ultimately it is the continued normalization of subserviating ourselves to automation and to machines, right? Which we absolutely should not do under any circumstances, right? We should not subserviate ourselves to machines, which is the goal, by the way. Really obviously is the goal. What they want is they want a fucking police dog on the streets barking orders at you, right? You have 10 seconds to comply. Drop the gun. You have 10 seconds to comply. Right? And those little robot dogs are going to come at you and they're going to have fucking tasers and shit. And if you don't obey them or if they think you're not obeying them, they will just fuck you up. Right? And that's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. That eventually there will come a point where the vampiric psychopath class will literally send completely loyal robot dogs down the streets. Or they'll take these fucking little things that we all got used to. Oh, here they are. They're so normal and all this kind of stuff. And they'll just put explosives and shit inside of them. Why wouldn't they? Right? Imagine one of these just opening up that little smiley face heart flap and it's got a little thing and it's shooting out gas pellets. And what do you think these things run on? right? We're talking about a climate change catastrophe. Like, what do you think these guys are doing? Like, what do you think this is? Like, it's everything wrong with our society encapsulated in a little smiling pink box. Like, get rid of these fucking things. Destroy them if you see them. It's your civic duty to do so. Yeah. Oh, I got a little bit of coffee. I could use a little bit more coffee, I tell you. Here's a great picture from a Russian artist. Yeah, there's a theory that you never actually buy a cup of coffee. You're just renting it for a couple of hours. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, is it any small wonder that the United States is losing prestige on the world stage? Like, they're constantly in a state of destroying a nation. Like, they literally can't help themselves at this stage. Like, and what for? Right? What for? To stymie the evils of communism. Like, yikes. Big yikes. Incidentally, here in Ontario, cases are now up to almost 1,300. In the past, when cases have been this high, we have gone into heavier lockdowns. So it just looks like we're just saying fuck it now. Like, the Ford administration's not interested. You want to come up, buddy? You want to come up and say hello to the people? You're giving me big, like, play with me vibes. Well, I can give you pets, buddy. I can give you pets. And if you come up here, I can give you real pets. You want to come up? You want to come up? No? Do you want to get this? Yeah, you do. Go get it. Oh, I threw it, buddy. Go get it. Go get it. Go get it. He's so cute, but he's so dumb. I mean, what do you expect? He's a pug. He's a pug. Just JC wants to see the doggo. He doesn't really like being picked up. So and he's old. So I don't want to cause him any problems. You'll see him though. He runs around back here all the time. Yeah, empire is a mass delusion, right? People have to agree to be dominated. Was it just the US and Israel that voted for the death robots? I don't know that there was. UN rejects call for regulating or banning killer robots. Yeah, I mean, like, the US can totally... Here, let's take a look. I bet you it is. Like, I bet you it is. Like, the United States is, like, completely psychopathic, right? Like, it's completely lost its mind. If it ever had it in the first place. UN rejects calls for regulating or banning killer robots. Robots. From The Guardian. U.S. official proposes non-binding code of conduct. Yeah, non-binding, that's great. Yeah, the U.S. has rejected calls, of course. Like, it's what it's going to turn into. It's going to be like robots on robots. Right? Yeah, French Revolution, one of my favorite events in history. Yeah. And, like, we need to get there. Like, we need to get there. Maybe not with the guillotining. Like, I'm not really in favor of public executions, especially as grisly as, like, a guillotine. But, like, we need to start locking people away. Like, and people who are walking around being like, yeah, we should completely allow, like, a fucking automated police force. Like a fucking robot. Like, no. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't imagine, like, simply even building one of these things should be considered completely abhorrent to us. Like, completely abhorrent. You are manifesting a demon into the world. Like, really explain to me the difference between someone, like, standing before the pentagram with the hood and being like, and, like, fire blows up and, like, there's a demon standing there and you say to the demon, go and oppress these people, and the demon laughs and goes and fucking does it, right? So the difference between that and like creating a robot and like and then flicking it on and saying go and oppress those people, like doesn't take a fucking genius to figure this out. Like, we are manifesting a demon into the world. It has no conscience. It can't. It can't. Buddy, do you want to come up? Do you want to come up? No, you don't. It has no conscience. It doesn't. It will stick completely to its programming. If it comes to fisticuffs, like if it comes to actual violence, it literally will fight to the death. It has no sense of self-preservation or any of that kind of shit, right? Like, and again, it's the same thing I was saying before. If you see one of these things on the streets of your city, it is your civic duty to destroy it. Like, it is your responsibility as a citizen of your nation to destroy these things. I read a cool theory, the dead internet. It's like 60% bots online now. You can walk into a room online, it's just bots fighting and arguing. Yeah. Robespierre initially opposed the guillotine, but the rest of the provisional government disagreed with him. That only changed when Britain, Austria, and the Holy Roman Empire got involved. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, really think about what it would be like to live in a society that was like fucking guillotining people, dude. Like, that's pretty crazy. Like, that's pretty crazy. Like, and like guillotining people, like, maybe you could have it in like a courthouse or something, right? You could have it in like a prison or some kind of thing. Okay, now you do want to come up. Okay, come on up. Come on up. And you're gonna complain about it anyway, eh? Jeez Louise. Jeez Louise. Go, go. Go, go, go. Go, go. I love you too, buddy. I love you too. Okay. Well, the pug is here now. All is well. Yeah, no, the bots are stupid. Like, the whole thing's stupid. Like, no, our whole society is fucking stupid. Like, it's a pretend society. It's like, there's no sense. No one at any point is asking, hey, should we maybe not do this? Should we maybe think about what the consequences of doing this is? Literally no one is doing that. Like, the sciences as they exist in North America and throughout the West are literally like, we should do it because we can. That's really where we're at. Like, we should smash apart particles we know nothing about because we can. We just want to see what happens. Like, what are you, fucking stupid? And the answer is absolutely. Like, absolutely, these guys are fucking stupid. They're well-educated morons. Like, that's really what we're dealing with as a people. That, like, our most highly educated people are largely moronic. That they simply do not care about basic things like consequences. Like, the more I read about the Long Hadron Collider, the more I read about this thing, the more I'm like, this is a reckless act of a demented species. Like, we're just gonna take these particles that we just recently discovered, that we don't actually know anything about, even in the theoretical, and we're gonna put them in a machine and smash them. Like, what are you, fucking stupid? And the answer is obviously yes. Like, we don't need to think too hard about that. Check it out sometimes. It's called the dead web theory. The internet used to be better. Like, it used to be better. It was more Wild West. There was less rules, but like all this corporate shit, like the corporations moved in and they corporatized everything, and instead of having like so think about Facebook, for example, right? Like, something like Facebook was an inevitability on the internet, and there were many iterations of it beforehand, right? And all that's happened, all that's happened is that some corporate asshole came along and put a wedge between us and a free source version of it. Like something like Facebook could be a free source thing that anybody can interact with and anybody can mess with, right? It completely could have been free source and freely available to the public without any of this algorithm bullshit. Or if there were algorithms, we could actually have access to what the algorithm is, so that we as a people could have a better say as to what it is we see. Like on Facebook, it was recently reported that they made it so that if you hit the angry emoji, like if you gave something an angry emoji, it was 5 times more. It gave 5 times more pressure than any other emoji. So what gets spread around and what do people see the most in such a system? Well, the stuff that's making people pissed off, right? Like, I recently read about Chinese TikTok. So in China, their TikTok, the algorithm, the state insists leans towards educational material. So like all the goofy people doing funny shit and all the hot women with their tits out, right? Like all of that still exists. But the algorithm is weighted more towards people who are putting forward educational stuff. And so even if you're on TikTok just to see like the thoughties and all that kind of stuff, you're going to get more run-ins with people who are also trying to teach you something interesting about a subject, right? And then on top of that, Chinese TikTok shuts down at 10. So at 10 p.m., they literally shut the app down. You can't use it anymore. Hey, there's a novel idea. How about we just shut all this shit down, right? Bots were always here, but they were simpletons. You could spot them right away. Remember the old days of Yahoo Chat, John? Oh, yeah. Yahoo Chat and Live Journal. Anybody do live journaling? Yeah. It's like before MySpace. Gonna have to disagree, John. Uh-oh. Barnabas is gonna disagree with me. We're gonna see on what grounds. On what grounds. Fight, 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 fight. Library Genesis is a good argument for the current arrangements. What's Library Genesis? Yeah, kids are limited to gaming time under the age of 18 in China now, and honestly, like I'm like, as someone who is a gamer, who plays a lot of games and all that kind of stuff, I have seen enough. I've seen enough information and enough research done to show that that's reasonable. Like it's reasonable to say to kids under the age of 18, we need to limit the amount of time that you're interacting with this thing, right? And I don't really have a problem with that. I'm more or less of the opinion that we should let kids have more freedom than we do in the real world. Like we should send them into the streets more. You know, let them live in the world that they actually live in. Like this idea that we're actually educating them by jamming them in like a room and having them sit behind a desk, like pretty shallow education, honestly. Like let them wander around the streets of their own town. Let them wander around their own city. Let them learn something about their own community and their own city. Right? Have them actually do retail work. Like everybody should do retail work at some point. LibGen is hated. Don't know what YouTube will do. Well, I'm on Wikipedia, so he's a file-sharing based shadow library website for scholarly journal articles. Oh yeah, I've heard of this. The site enables free access to content that is otherwise paywalled, describes itself as a link aggregator, providing a searchable database. Yeah, like this, in my view, is what this should be the baseline of what the internet is. Right? It should be the absolute baseline of what the internet is. That like we all have access to all this kind of stuff, right? Well, and ostensibly, Nanya, it is still the parents' job. You want to go down, buddy? You want to go down? We're going down? Good boy. Good boy. Say bye. Say bye. Bye, Milo. Milo says bye. Good boy. Good boy. Down you go, buddy. Yeah, American kids spend 4 to 7 minutes outside each day on average, and that 4 to 7 minutes is probably like traveling, right? It's probably like traveling to something. TV used to shut down at midnight in North America. Yeah, that's right. That's right. They'd put up those bars, right? And this now ends our broadcast day. And I don't know, like everyone. I was a big believer right at the beginning. I was a big believer that like everyone should have access to everything. Like that this capital market, like this idea that like money dictates and all this kind of stuff. It seems to only get in the way. And in terms of gaming, it's really making games a lot shittier. Like everything is being produced to have what's called mass appeal. A lot of these games, while they're big in scope and spectacle, really don't have anything interesting to contribute or say, right? I'm playing a game right now. I highly advise everybody go and seek it out, called Sid Meier's Colonization. I recommend the more recent iteration of it rather than the 90s one, due to the 2000s one. And it literally is the story of Europeans colonizing North America, right? And interacting with the First Nations people and all that kind of stuff. Where it drops the ball is its not mistreatment, but sort of exclusion of slavery. Like, slavery is not part of the game experience. It's not part of the conversation. And so in that way, it's not really good in terms of historically accurate telling of the story. But in terms of dealing with First Nations people, and in terms of how colonial peoples come in and deal with First Nations people, it's pretty accurate. It's called Civilization. It's Civilization 4. It's based on the Civilization engine, but the game name is Colonization. Sid Meier's made another game back in the 90s called Sid Meier's Colonization that was about the colonization of First Nations land. That's what it's about. And it's fairly successfully executed. It's got its own like resource management system and all of this, and eventually and the purpose of the game is to eventually foment enough unrest in the new world that you declare independence and then fight a war against the superpower, against the French king or the British monarch or whatever. Like, that's the whole thing, and but I think it stands up as an interesting game because, like, for the most part, you go in, the white colonizer, right? And you can choose a more peaceable route with, like, the First Nations people if you like. But for the most part, you're going to go in there and you're going to fuck them up. You're going to have a war with them. You're going to blow them up. You're going to steal their land, right? Like, that's what you're going to do. Because the game pretty much demands that that's what you do. Like, eventually you grow too big, eventually you encroach too much, and the First Nations people go to war with you. Yeah, Civ 4 was a classic. Civ 5 had a lot of interesting ideas in it, but ultimately I don't think worked as a game. And Civ 6 is good. Civ 6 is really good. I really enjoy Civilization 6. I've been playing games of Civilization 6 with my brother, so we go to head-to-head with one another. That's the way to play that game, dude. Like, going head-to-head with other people really makes the game a lot more interesting. Playing against the computer is kind of lame, honestly. Yeah, as I get older, and I can only handle 2 to 3 matches a day, then I just get bored. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of in the same category, right? And Grinning Guys, you saying Dota 2? Yeah, way too addictive. I went down the same kind of road, or I'm in the same kind of road, honestly, with a game called Heroes of the Storm. It's like Dota 2, but it's from Blizzard Entertainment. And I like that. Like, I like all the old Blizzard games and all, like World of Warcraft and Warcraft 3 and the Diablo franchise, all that kind of stuff. right? Like I'm a huge fan of the Blizzard games. They're an important part of my childhood, honestly. And so to see them all in this like League of Legends style or Dota 2 style like action brawler kind of game, yeah, and I don't know, it's super fun. I got friends that I play with. It's great. It's great. It's like a little joy in my life. Zool rules. Video games, eh? Video games. Even as somebody who is a gamer, I'm still a little bit on the fence about video games. Like, I think that they, the ugly child of MOBA. How dare you, sir? How dare you? No, dude. League of Legends is the ugly child of MOBAs. Like, League of Legends, you literally, what? You stay in lane playing whack-a-mole for 15 minutes, have one fight in mid lane with your team, maybe, and then surrender. That's fucking League of Legends. Like, so you want to talk about which game is shittier? Like, at least in Heroes of the Storm, it's like you go and you're fighting and you're with your team and you're all together, right? Oh, yeah, Wowhead for 5 years? Dude. World of Warcraft, where everybody my age has like a little, like if you're a computer person or a video game person, everybody's got a moment. Yeah, I think you're right, Ezial. That's right. It is killing the AAA games. They're cutting corners just to meet profit quotas. Like Battlefield 2024, yeah. Have I seen Arcane? I've heard of Arcane. No, it was way more. It was enough time to learn a skill trade. Yeah. Yeah, I know, dude. I know exactly what you're talking about, bud. Like World of Warcraft was, like when I was playing, I was like my whole group of friends were playing, and if you ask me what killed World of Warcraft for me was the 40-man raids. Just like why introduce these? Like and the reason why they introduced 40-man raids was because of the Chinese market. That. In China, the number one MMO, massive multiplayer game at the time, was a game called Legacy 2. And the raids that existed in Legacy 2 required 1,600 people. Okay? 1,600 people had to come together and organize with one another in order to take down like a dragon or some kind of crazy thing, right? And so when World of Warcraft tried to get into the Chinese market, at the time they had like 5-man dungeons that you could get into, and the Chinese people just didn't take it seriously. They were just like 5 people, whatever. Like what are they, a loser? Like only 5 people? Like, oh, this game is just for like basement dwellers then. And so Blizzard introduced 40-man raids, and that was enough to get like people in China actually like, oh yeah, okay. But for someone like me, it was like me and my 4 friends, and we would do like 5-man dungeons. And instead, they were like, oh, by the way, here's these 40-man goddamn raids. And it's just like, I don't want to have to fucking like organize to play this fucking game, dude. Like, I don't want to like... And that's what killed it for me. Like, I eventually just was like, it takes an hour to organize a raid. You know, you're just like, fuck it. I'm working on a game, oh, very good, which will help educate people about some of the socioeconomic problems and climate change and what we can do about it to save lives, about I think natural disasters as well. Yeah, I think that this is where games can really start to flourish. That games can actually really teach people about subjects like economics, subjects like politics, like socioeconomic stuff, in interesting ways. At least give people a larger meta perspective, right? Give like a game franchise like Civilization, for example, is really, really interesting because you get history, you get you get a more meta perspective of what the world is like and how people expand in it. And of course, it's not completely accurate, obviously, but and my biggest complaint in games these days, though, is that the concept of money in video games. Yeah, Fallout taught me how to survive in a dystopia. Exactly, Matthias. Exactly. But like in video games, like money is something that you just kind of get, and then you can accumulate however much of it you want, and it doesn't actually have an impact in the world. Like again, like the Civilization franchise, like money is like something you mine. You like literally are like, I mine gold and that's money. And you're like, but that's not actually how money is or how it works or what it does or what it's for. Like it's most video games have a very like neoliberal, frankly, outlook on the way money works. They treat it like it is actually an item, like I have grain, I have money. These are the same in terms of how they actually work in the world, and it's just not. And they don't have a concept of like the cyclical nature of how economics actually works. That like if you if you have money and then you spend that money, right? Well, it doesn't just vanish, right? It doesn't just like that money is given to someone and then that person takes it and does something with it. And it has a cyclical kind of nature to it, right? And like, yeah, I loathe the future of video games where everything's going to be NFT'd. Yeah, it's starting already. Yeah, you think that like microtransactions were bad before, dude. Wait until you're like playing a game and like they're literally like this texture on the wall you need to spend 25 cents in order to get. Like, that said though, I do think that video games offer like if you are a small indie developer who just has an idea and you understand how to use some of the tools in order to make these games, you can make something really interesting and something profound. Like just like a small scale game like Papers, Please, for example, right, is a great example of what I'm talking about. And like or Hades. Hades is a game that I really thought was really, really excellent. It was so close in my. I don't want to spoil anything, but like they didn't really commit to like the Grecian gods enough for me to say this could be canonized. But their storytelling was excellent. Really good characterization. You're really and the music. The music in it was so beautiful. Like, I play a song from time to time on the stream that's from Hades, and I think it's just an absolutely gorgeous piece. And I remember Diablo people selling shit on eBay for 100. Yeah, I remember that too. That you like sell characters and shit. Ridiculous. I want Civ, but also with a market that can crash. Yeah, like it'd be cool if you had like a Civilization style game, but like economics was actually done properly, you know? That it's actually like, instead of it just being like, oh, you have gold and you spend money to get units or a building or whatever, right? Like that it's actually like, no, like currencies are a thing. They actually exist and have always existed in societies, and that it would, and like, it would be interesting if there was a more, because like this, what the Civilization games present is this idea of like a cohesive, unified sort of empire. It is ultimately an empire simulator, right? Like that's what it's building. It's not actually a civilization simulator, it's an empire simulator. And the reason why you know that's true is because there's plenty of examples throughout time and in the modern era, even like what we're seeing right now, of sections of the society hoarding all of the wealth for themselves and excluding a large section of the population, right? And just kind of making off with the goods, right? Like that's what we're looking at here in this society. We're looking at a pilfering. And it's this, like a more interesting game for how it's been structured for that might actually get closer to the mark would be like the Crusader Kings or Europa Universalis, which comes out of Paradox Games. And they have really tried to make it less about like a homogenous, just like city, state, or empire, and more about the individuals who are alive. So you like play as the king, and the king can die, and when the king dies, you move on to play as the heir of that king, and you get to actually see the profound political effects of what it is like for like the ruler of a kingdom to actually die and pass titles onto his family, and how it actually does shift political landscapes in big ways, which is more accurate to how things actually were in human history. That it wasn't like a constant, like the Grecian Empire didn't just exist and was like a constant, like 100% always existent force, and these empires break apart and degrade as people die and as like hereditary title owners pass titles around and things like this, and they actually have like a pretty decent viewpoint of like how money is and what money does. Like it's not completely accurate, I think, but I feel like there's a lot of debate going on about the nature of money and what money is these days. Yeah, I like Mario, but I won't pay $400 for a damn Switch. What a racket! I'm with that for the Legend of Zelda game, dude. The Legend of Zelda game, I really want to play Breath of the Wild. Like Breath of the Wild looks kick ass. Breath of the Wild looks super kick ass. Like they took that whole idea of like open world, like exploration. You can go anywhere at any time, and then just Nintendified it, and like. I'm so in for it. I'm so down, but I'm with you. I'm like $400. Come on, for a Switch. Like fuck off. Hades is absolutely one of the best games I've played in a while. Yeah, complete package. Runs great, plays great, excellent music, excellent story, script, voice acting, insane value. Absolutely, and like the combat system is so clean and crisp. Like there's no dicking around, right? Like sometimes I play a game and like the combat's sludgy or just like not really reacting, or like they're making decisions in their, like I don't understand why you would make a decision to make your combat less fun. And I play lots of games where it's like very clear that they're like, yeah, we'll make it like he's floaty or he slides around or something. And I'm just like, no, like I want him to like be crisp. I want to feel competent while I do this shit. And like, I don't want to be fighting my own character the whole fucking time. And that's exactly, honestly, that is exactly why I actually really have come down as a big negative on the Dark Souls series. People get really like, oh, Dark Souls, it's so, what an intense kind of experience. I find the Dark Souls experience to just be fucking annoying. I find the Dark Souls experience to just be it's not difficult. Like, that's the thing. Like, everybody's always like, oh, it's so hard, and it's all, oh, it's so, what a difficult experience. Like, but it's not difficult. It's just annoying, right? Like, when you die in Dark Souls, it's not because the difficulty of the game, or you had to align or any of that kind of stuff. It's because something fucking annoying happens, right? Like, it's like, you're walking down a corridor and there's no walls and you can fall, so you're just walking down the corridor, and then your character like does a little jig and it loses its balance and you fall and you die. It's like, Dark Souls did introduce a lot of interesting things in the boss fights. Like their boss fights were actually pretty cool. But, like, then they put in this annoying thing where, like, oh, you lose that boss fight, you gotta go all the way back here, you gotta fight a whole bunch of new guys. Like, I'm just like, gah, get out of here, Dark Souls. Get out of here. I was thinking the other day how toxic Oil Tycoon and Zoo Tycoon and the other games like that really are. Like, toxic how? Like, that you think that they're not really being that honest about what they're doing is what I think you mean. That like the like games like Oil Tycoon and Zoo Tycoon, they kind of put like a happy face on it. They really do put like just like, oh yeah, you can make like a little park, right? like the way Rail what the fuck was the name of that game? The park one, the one where you made like Roller Coaster Tycoon. Roller Coaster Tycoon was sick. That was a sick one. That one was like absolutely perfect. And then they just kind of were like, yeah, but now you're an oil tycoon and an oil baron, and that's normal and cool, right? There's no like displacement of indigenous people. There's no like polluting the environment so it's unusable anymore, right? Like none of that exists. You're just cleanly transporting a good people want, right? I'm playing A Link to the Past. A Link to the Past is the best Zelda. It's the best Zelda. If you want like the true Legend of Zelda experience, you are talking about Link to the Past in my view. I used to do speed runs of A Link to the Past. Like I got to the point, even recently, as recently as 5 years ago, I could sit down and go through a game from start to finish in an evening, in a single evening. I can finish that game in a single evening. And without glitches or any of that bullshit. I can't stand that. I go and see like speed runs of like Link to the Past, and I'm just like, no, this is bullshit. Like they're like doing stupid like glitches where they take Link out of the world even and like moving around. Zelda on the set, that was Link to the Past. That was Link to the Past. Ocarina of Time on the N64 was essentially a remake of it, and a successful one. A successful one. They basically took the 2D top-down SNES game and then put it in a 3D environment. And the guy that designed it outright said that that's what he wanted to do. And so it's like, yeah, okay. And he did a pretty good job. So Ocarina of Time is really high up there for me, but honestly, Link to the Past is the one that really nailed it. Absolutely. Just bought the Nintendo with 600 games. A giant tiger for $30. Oh yeah. I'm surprised it took them that long. Because you can download like the entire Nintendo anthology onto your computer, right? I actually think I have it. I think I've got like the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo games. So you could just have them. Like I was blown away. It took them that long to get like a Nintendo with all the games on them. Like, and $30? What a great deal. Fucking everybody should have this. Like like the original Nintendo had some great games. It had some real great games, real winners. Like Super Mario 2 and 3. You're right, Jared, man. Mario 3 was the best Mario. Although Super Mario World and Mario 64 were both very good. Like Mario 64 was like, for the time, that was like truly cutting edge, right? That was like truly cutting edge. That really, I remember playing Mario 64 and being blown away by it. Like just being like at that time like 13-year-old kid firing up Mario 64, thinking like, okay, this is gonna be like another Mario game, and then it's like a true 3D experience, right? All these creative characters, all this really creative stuff. It set the bar. It really showed everybody, like, if you want to make a game like this, boom, this is what you got to do right here. And I don't know that Nintendo has ever like done that kind of cutting edge thing so dramatically. Like the leap from 2D into 3D spaces was completely Mario 64. It was a huge jump. Yeah, the incentive to become a tycoon and exploit, enslave the animals for profit, and then like, yeah, polluting. Yeah. Like it's just like normalizing it, like making it so it's like, this is okay to do. Right? Like it'd be great if they made a tycoon game like that and they were like very much like, yeah, like you're a villain. It's like Evil Genius, that game where you play as like an evil genius and you fight like James Bond style figures. You know, anybody here remember Dungeon Keeper? I was a huge Dungeon Keeper fan, man. Dungeon Keeper was the shit. I absolutely loved the shit out of Dungeon Keeper. I played way too much of it. Like way too much of it. And they seem incapable of like realizing that how sick that game was and like doing another one, because they absolutely should. Oh, Perfect Dark and 007. 007 was like the best. What's so funny about 007 is that the multiplayer which was the part, like, what was the best part of the game, they weren't going to include it. And you're like, oh shit, like, it's like the reason why that game was so good. Yeah. No, like, an original Zelda was super good too. Like, the original Zelda was super good, except for one thing they did on purpose to make you buy Nintendo Power magazines, where they nowhere in the original Zelda game is there any information about how to traverse the Lost Forest, and the pattern. The only way that you can figure out the pattern is either by just trial and error or by buying a Nintendo Power magazine that gives you the answer at the time, because there's no internet, right? Like, you're just like, so it was kind of shitty of them, but worked out. Yeah, I'm wrapping it up for the kids, but it's really for me. Yeah, those are the best gifts. OOT is my first Zelda. OOT. Which one's OOT? That's not Breath of the Wild. Anyway. And 007 almost got you to join the CIA? Shit. Effective. NHL 95 on Sega. Fuck yeah. NHL 95 on Sega was fucking great. That game was fucking great. NHL 95 hit everything. It was exactly perfect. It was exactly right. Oh, does anybody Ocarina of Time. Yeah. Ocarina of Time, if that's your first Zelda, that is a great Zelda game to start. Honestly, like, the problem, I didn't realize it because I showed A Link to the Past to a friend of mine and said, like, yeah, I love this game. It's super great. And I didn't really realize, like, the top-down view with, like, the swishing sword and all that kind of stuff is not very intuitive for someone who's just starting with it. And, like, it's so the learning curve is really high on Link to the Past, whereas Ocarina of Time does all of the same stuff, but the learning curve is way lower. It's much easier to figure out and, like, to conceptualize, like, oh, this guy's got a sword, so I hit this button. He's got a sword. He's got a shield, right? Sure, Jared, you almost joined CIA. Oh, just JC throwing it down. I gotta tell you, if a CIA agent was actually in the chat, being like a CIA agent and, like, gathering resources here, I would be so flattered. I really would. I'd be like, oh, I've attracted the CIA to the degree that they feel they need to have an agent in here gathering information about me. Oh my god. Ah, so nice. So, if that is in fact happening, thank you, Mr. CIA or CSIS agent. You're on the wrong side of history. I love talking about video games, dude. Especially today. Like, I didn't even do a video today. I wanted today to be like a mental health day, because, like, Jesus Christ. Has anybody else noticed that, like, the whole fucking thing's going to shit? Anybody else noticed? It's like the whole fucking thing is going to shit. Oh, does anybody remember, what was that? There was a hockey game as well as a football game on the Sega Genesis where you played as, like, monsters. I think it literally was just called, like, Monster Hockey or something like that. And you could win the game by, like, scoring the most points at the end of the time, like a normal game, or you could win the game by just killing the entire rest of their team. So you could literally just, like, blow up their team, and the team would be like skeletons and ghouls, like zombies and shit. That game was fucking great. Can't remember the name of it, but I love that one. Super fun. Or like Golden Axe, right? Golden Axe. Fuck, man, this is like nostalgia alley right now. Like, we're really, like, going down. Or like Gauntlet. Your XKGB, does that help? Oh my goodness. Does one ever become truly XKGB? Is there really such a thing? So, we'll all be paying a lot more for food next year, says Canada's Food Price Report. 2022 expected to see the biggest annual increase in food bills on record, new report says. Sky-high food prices were one of many negative impacts that Canadians felt during the pandemic-plagued year of 2021, and a new report suggests that the problem is only going to get worse next year. Canada's Food Price Report, released today, is an annual report published by Dalhousie University and the University of Guelph that's the most comprehensive set of data currently available about a subject that all Canadians are impacted by: food. As with everything else, supply chain issues caused by the COVID-19 pandemic wreaked havoc on food prices and availability. Weather events such as the heat dome also didn't help put food on the table. The meat counter was a big deal this year, said Sylvain Charlebois, the chief researcher on the report and a professor studying food distribution and security at Dalhousie University in Halifax. It really pushed food inflation much higher. This time last year, the report was forecasting an increase of between 3 and 5% for food prices. With a theoretical family of 4 consisting of 1 man, 1 woman, 1 boy, and 1 girl on track to pay about $13,907 to feed themselves in 2021. As it turns out, they were only over by $106. The report tabulates that theoretical family ended up spending $13,801 to feed themselves that year. In the coming year, Charlebois says, food price inflation is on track to be higher with a likely increase of between 5 and 7%, or an extra $966 a year for the typical family grocery bill. It's the highest increase that we're predicting in 12 years, both in terms of dollars and percentage, Charlebois said. It's not going to be easy. As usual, different types of food are expected to go up in price at different rates, with dairy and baked goods expected to be comparatively much more pricey, while past culprits like meat and seafood will look comparatively flat. So, here's how much you should expect to pay for these types of food next year. Type of food: dairy, 6 to 8%, restaurants, 6 to 8%, bakery, 5 to 7, vegetables, 5 to 7, fruits, 3 to 5, other, so boxes of shitty macaroni and cheese, 2 to 4, meat and seafood, though, 0 to 2%. So, but a total of 5 to 7% increase in the bill. The report says dairy is set to get more expensive because of higher input costs for things like feed, energy, and fertilizer, along with higher transportation and labor costs. The Canadian Dairy Commission warned as much in a report last month, saying retail milk prices are set to rise by 8.4% next year to account for those added costs on the production side. Baked goods, meanwhile, are in for sharp price increases, largely because the hot summer on the prairies was devastating to wheat and other crops, the report says. I have a gluten intolerance, so The other reason for the uptick are varied, but an increasingly large factor is the growing cost of food waste. More than half of all the food produced in Canada gets thrown out, research suggests. And that inefficiency is finally starting to show up at the cash register, at a time when Canadians are counting their pennies more than ever, which is why some Canadians are trying to do something about it. Jagger Gordon is the founder of Feed It Forward, a non-profit program that has set up nearly a dozen pay-what-you-can grocery stores across Canada to give people access to nutritious and affordable food. Gordon, a chef, says he was inspired to develop the idea when he did catered events and was horrified by the amount of food that went to waste. I wanted to showcase how we can eliminate that food waste, be socially responsible, and give dignity back to people by utilizing it and putting it back into meals and onto their tables, Jagger said in an interview at his location on Dundas Street in downtown Toronto. The food on the shelves at the store comes from various grocery stores, bakeries, processing plants, restaurants, and other agencies in and around the city. Shoppers can come in and browse the selection of food on offer to cook themselves, or get recipes and a pre-made selection of meals on site without having to necessarily worry if they can afford it when it comes time to leave the store.
For every $5 a customer chooses to pay, they can get about $20 worth of food, Gordon says. The system works, in large part because it takes advantage of food that other food businesses can't sell, but is otherwise perfectly fine. Food that's about to expire, for example, or fresh vegetables that aren't the right shape. A lot of grocery stores also, if there's one grape that's gone fuzzy in a package, they'll destroy the whole package, rather than just taking the time to pull it out, Gordon said. What shocks me is the resources that are put into all that production for that plant or product to be developed, and then be destroyed so easily. Charles Boy says there's a growing trend from some stores and consumers to try to bring down that waste by finding ways to sell it to those who want it. Grocers are empowering consumers to rescue food more by showcasing products that are about to expire at a discount, 25 to 50% off, he said. People are starting to realize that the aesthetics that we see in the grocery store is costing us money. While many consumers have embraced a new trend for organic food, Gordon says it's made food waste even worse in some ways. They blemish fast, he said. They're just discarded or destroyed sooner. It's not hard to find Canadians who are changing their habits and making different choices in their grocery cart or restaurant menus to try to offset rising costs. Browsing the aisle to the grocery store at St. John's, Myrtle Mitchell says she's had to change how she shops because of higher costs. Prices are almost double, she said in an interview, which pushed stress on her fixed income. She tries to shop on sale where she can, but she can only do so much, which is why at the grocery store she goes straight to the essentials first. Then I circle around and then I go up and down the extra rows. I know if I've got money left, I go and pick up extra groceries that I have extra stock for. It's a similar story for Nicola Moore in Hamilton. When the pandemic started, she worried about access to food, so she got into gardening to feed her family. I ended up harvesting spinach, cucumbers, tomatoes, a garden variety of vegetables, she said in an interview. That helped me financially because I got it for free, basically, just by going and watering every day. Growing a garden was helpful, but ultimately she still needs to go to the store for food, and she too says it's changing how she does that. I'm hunting for bargains. I'm looking for coupons online. I have an app on my phone that tells me when the sales are. Back in Toronto at the Pay What You Can grocery store, Jerry Oshima has nothing but rave reviews for what his neighbor Gordon is doing to help Canadians who need a hand with sky-high food prices. In the pandemic, it's a little bit difficult because people work from home, and the pain is a little bit high, but it's okay, he said, while buying some soup for himself and drinks for his staff at the nearby office. It's a very good store for the neighborhood, he said. This guy is good. He helps everybody. That's from Pete Evans, who's the senior business writer for cbcnews.ca. Prior from coming to the CBC, his work has appeared in the Globe and Mail, the Financial Post, the Toronto Star, Canadian Business Magazine, and, believe it or not, Circuit's Assembly Magazine. And there's his Twitter information and all the rest, if you like. What do you got? JC needs a waterboard. Oh my god. No. Oh, Gauntlet will be on the Nintendo, dude, for sure. I didn't recognize as a commie or a capitalist. I don't believe in division. When they ask for my race on those terms, I just write Canadian. You left or right? I just say neither. Yeah. I mean, do what you can. Do what you want. A big reason why I started to call myself a communist is because I would be talking about solutions to the, obvious problems we have. And when I started talking about, obvious solutions to these obvious problems that we have, people started calling me a communist. And I just, I would be I'm not really, I don't really care to go down that rabbit hole. And then it was when Jordan Peterson stood up and said, Marxists are evil and, all that kind of nonsense bullshit. And so I was okay, I'm going to look into this more studiously, more maybe I should have, a better response. And so I started reading Marx and started, the Communist Manifesto, Capital, all that stuff. And very quickly I was just oh yeah, I'm for sure I'm a communist. Absolutely. And then from there, it was oh, communism is responsible for so many atrocities, the famine. And then you do some basic cursory reading on it, and you're dude, they were not responsible for that. Like, nor were they interested in doing that. Like, it's ridiculous. No, it still is kind of taboo to be a commie. I know for a fact that there are people who, like, I say that I'm a commie or a communist, and they just like, okay, boom, and I'm out, right? I know that happens for sure. Like, but you know, when you there's I forget who said this quote, but it's like someone like Nelson Mandela, but I don't think it was Mandela. But in any case, he said, when I fed the poor, they called me a saint. When I asked why there were poor, they called me a communist. What do you think about patriotic communism? Is that this new kind of blending of like the Nazbol guys, like where they're saying like communism is actually conservative? Because if that, like, I don't actually know what patriotic communism. Yeah, they weaponized the term commie, yeah. Patriot, people living within to adopt a boundless love for the side, commitment, cause for communism. Yeah, I just don't know enough about it. Seems fine. I don't have strong opinions on it. I'll put it that way. Like, some people have like really strong opinions on like the no, it needs to be just the nation, or like no, it needs to be an international kind of thing, and I'm just like, I don't know, dude. Like, whatever works. Like, I'm very utilitarian with this stuff. Like, there's this like now famous phrase. Somebody said, and I think it was Deng. Somebody said to Deng Xiaoping, aren't what you're doing like, is it like you say you're communists, but like isn't what you're doing like very capitalistic? And he says, black cat, red cat, whoever catches the mouse. You're just like, there you go. Like, call it what you want, right? If it's doing what we want it to do, then we'll use it. Like, and that really showed me, like, oh yeah, these guys don't have like a fundamentalist view of this stuff. Like, they're not being fundamentalists the way that the West is. Like, the West is like fundamentalist capitalists, like to the point where they're willing to sacrifice literally everything at the altar, right? Literally everything. Milo, buddy, I can't go down for a while yet. Okay, come on, come away from there. We went down at the beginning, dude. You don't have to pee. You just want attention. We all know it's true. Yeah, so we would attack each other like a bunch of idiots. Well, the strategy that came out of like the post FDR era and into the McCarthy era, right, is that they wanted to get rid of communists. Like they saw communism as, they understood that communism was like their ideological enemy, the capitalist ideological enemy. And like they literally destroyed like Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, right, in order to staunch the spread of communism, right? Like it was a hysteria, like the anti-communist shit, like, and that hysteria is starting to come back, and you can see how they're planting the seeds of it, like all of the popular media. Like when I was growing up in popular media, the villains were always Nazis, right? They were always Nazis, but now the villains. Okay, guys, I'm sorry to do this in the middle of the stream. My dog, I swear to God, I took him down, but he's scratching on the door, and I got to get him down. And so what I'm going to do is I have a video, goddammit. I had a video ready to go. Not that one. Here we go. This full disclosure, right? This is CPC propaganda, but like they basically nail the United States pretty hard. Oh, are you okay?
In the world, Princess America's got style. That means she has to give up this graceful, swan-like vibe by trying not to call a spade a spade. For instance, when she says,
"The world needs my summit for democracy.
She actually means
I need a word to come to the party that remind me of how great I still am.
when she says
Invites were sent to my democratic besties from all over the world.
she actually means
Only my definition of democracy counts. I don't care what anyone else thinks, even if your points are valid. The rest of you, stay at home.
when she says
Renewing democracy is essential to meeting the unprecedented challenges of our time.
she actually means
Rescue my approval ratings. It's essential.
when she says
Leaders will be encouraged to announce specific actions and commitments to advance the summit's goals.
she actually means.
Actions? Commitments? Come on. The summit is about the summit itself.
As you can see, the United States has devoted a lot of PR towards hyping up this thing. But what do ordinary people actually think? The Dear Show has sent our journalists to the streets of the world to find out. For the sake of fairness, let's first hear from the countries not invited.
The US democracy doesn't even work in its own country. It is a creation of the West, which they want to impose on Africans so that they can continue looting our resources in the name of the so-called democracy.
It's quite meaningless whether you're invited or not. It doesn't make any sense and it doesn't mean anything.
د دې دیموکراسي چې دا د خپل شخصي ګټو لپاره ده اصلا د نور نړۍ لپاره نه ده.
О какой демократии может идти речь в государстве, которое не вступает в диалог со всеми, чья позиция отличается от их собственной?
你随便你爱办什么办什么，就不起作用。咱说这有些东西不起作用啊。各家过各的日子，各家这个日子这个过日子手法不同，对不对？你想强调我要求我这样，我肯定不服气。
Wow, that was brutal. But it's understandable. After all, those people are from countries not invited to the summit. How about people from those that are? Maybe they can provide us with a more positive spin on things?
They have a lot of flaws. They are not number one in nothing. They just live a big lie. Number one. No, the number one maybe in racism.
أمريكا دعت هذا المؤتمر بحجة الديمقراطية.
القمة الأخيرة دعت بها أمريكا قمة فاشلة بداية فاشلة. أمريكا لا تمثل النموذج الديمقراطي.
I think that it is more political reasons, but I don't think it's right.
It seems Washington has to work on its charm offensive, especially after hearing this.
The US administration has come up with the idea to convene a summit for democracy. It goes without saying that Washington is going to choose the participants by itself, thus hijacking the right to decide to what degree a country meets the standards of democracy. Essentially, this initiative is quite in the spirit of a Cold War, as it declares a new ideological crusade against all dissenters.
We need nobody to judge the state of Hungarian democracy as if in a school exam.
民主不是装饰品，看广告更要看疗效。
Oh, I'm a-coming. Share screen. Share screen. Sorry about that, guys. We are back. Chair stream. Hopefully that wasn't for too long. You know how it is. I got my dog down, and immediately he's like, oh, I'm going to, like, take a long time doing this. All right, what are you guys talking about? When I hear the term communist, the first thing that comes to mind is when an Asian with a bayonet. Oh, okay. But I mean, like, that makes sense. Like, the Vietnamese and the Vietnamese and the Laosians and the Cambodians, like, they were all communists, right? Patriotic communism for USSR or China is other countries under threat equal good. Patriotic communism for settler colonial states, usually just to appeal to rightists, equal bad. Okay. There are a lot of misled Canadians that actually believe in culture to a communist. I know, right? And my statement to them is, I wish. Like, I wish. It would be really great if Trudeau was a communist, we'd actually, like, things would be a lot better. We'd actually have a much more interesting and robust conversation going on. Yeah. You were right about Ford's government making 1,300 COVID look like it's normal. Yep. That's what we're doing now. Right? Oh yeah, it's completely normal, right? Totally normal, just like keep like it's the keep keep calm and move along, right? What is it? Keep calm and carry on. Yeah, that's all it is now. Like, literally, they might as well just have this behind them, right? Keep calm and carry on. Just, that's it. This is what's coming out. And, like, what I love about this, by the way, because this became, like, really fashionable in, like, what was it, 2015, I think? In around that time. To, like, everything became, like, keep calm and whatever, or, like, any of that kind of stuff. Like, this, so this slogan and this thing was made during World War II, and they didn't release it in the public because they thought it was a bit too much. They thought it was a bit too on the nose. No, they're not. Of course they're not. They're not going to do that. Like, for God's sakes, Doug Ford's own daughter, right? Like, you guys know about Doug Ford's daughter, right? Like, she's coming out with incredible statements in regards to COVID-19 and all of this. Like, and she's being very open and very upfront about it. Like, she's releasing, like, TikToks and things where she's outright using all the anti-vax sloganeering and all that kind of stuff and throwing all kinds of shade and all of this. It's like, that's Doug Ford's daughter. Like, you think Doug Ford takes any of this seriously? He doesn't care. Like, he doesn't give a shit at all, right? Like, his most recent campaign ads, like, literally, he's banking on this idea that Ontarians will be so greedy for the 413. Like, that's what he's banking on. He's just gonna believe that, like, his supporters are gonna buy into this idea that the Highway 413 is actually going to be meaningful somehow. When it's obviously just like a complete grift and a cash grab. Like, it's a total cash grab. It's the Mike Harris administration all over again. You want to come back up, buddy? You want up? No? Oh, you want your stick? Go get it. Go get it. Go get it. Little guy. I can't believe you guys don't agree with me about Chinese stagflation not being accidental or natural. I really feel it's on purpose. It's a theory, no proof, and that's why we don't go along with you on it, bud. Like, it's a theory. Like, I would like some documents. Because there's always smoking guns. Like, there's always smoking guns. Like, always. There hasn't been a time in history where an event has occurred just completely bereft of any kind of conversation or communication or evidence about it. What do you guys think of the East and the West separating? I mean, like, that's the basis of the whole Cold War, right? Like, that's the whole Cold War. That you have Europe, you have the traditional First World, what's been called the First World, right? Like, it's America, Canada, the EU, and Australia. versus basically the rest of the planet, right? And there's like groups that wiggle, right? Like, so like Brazil is one of those. Like Brazil right now is with the Americans, but it'll swing. Oh, okay, East and West Canada. I don't think that that's serious. I mean, I understand that there are like separatist movements that exist in Quebec and as well as Alberta, but I just don't think that that's very serious. Like I think that there might come a moment where it might come to a head, like it did in Quebec in the 90s under Chrétien, but I do think that Canadians, part of what it is, like the Canadian ethos, is this belief that we are better off together. That the entire argument for federation and for being in a federation is so that if my province hits the shitter, well, your province can help. And then when your province hits the shitter, then we can... And so that balances the scales. I got you, buddy. I got you. Right in the middle of the stream, eh, buddy? Right in the middle of the stream. You're being very demanding. Very demanding. It's almost like you have no comprehension of what's going on. You're a good boy, buddy. You're a good boy. So, I don't think that that's... I think a lot of events are not properly documented. I mean, could you give me an example? Starlight Chakras? Good name, by the way. I like that. Starlight Chakras. Like, you'll find that when you delve in to any moment in history, right? Like, and you take your pick. There's a lot. There's usually way more documentation than you think. And, like, properly documented, I don't know what that even really means. Like, there's always people writing and talking about the event. And, like, you can fall into that, like, history is written by the winners, but there's always somebody on the other side of the conversation. We need large communes in Canada. Even with COVID, I think it's a good idea. Well, we've done communes in Canada. When I was growing up in Manitoba, there were communes all over the place. And, like, there are laws on the books for how to set up a commune. Like, we could all get together and set up a commune, guy. Like we could do it. Like, really. We really could. A lot of children who are being dug up without names. I mean, but that's a very specific, like, that's an incredibly specific, like, event. Like, we have a lot of information about the residential school system. Like, we've got a lot of information about the residential school system. Like, that's this specific, like, the name of a child in the event. Like, that's a very, very specific piece of evidence. But, like, we have the public documents about them voting on the residential school system. We have people who went into the residential school system. We've got the Catholic Church's own records of the residential school system. Like, we've got a lot of information about the residential school system. I just find it hard to believe a lot. I suppose that's a fair thing to say, Starlight. Like, I mean, we're lied to so much, right? There's so much lying that happens in this society. And so much self-delusion. But, like, that's why we need to focus on source documentation and focus on, like, the information that we have on hand, right? And always evidence, always base what you're thinking on evidence and facts and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm trying to say is that there are always, those documents always exist, right? They always exist. And oftentimes those documents exist because there are people involved in the project who are like, we need to document this, and we need to actually keep track of what we're doing, right? Like the people who committed to some of the most grotesque genocides in history were proud of it, right? That always pays to remember that. Like, that when we were committing the residential school genocide, we weren't doing it while being like, oh, this is dingy and we're so bad and, oh, the history will think poorly of us. They were proud of it, right? They were proud of it. Like, and that's true of like Adolf Hitler. That's true of like all of like any Montezuma, for God's sakes. Like we could, you can find all kinds of like the grotesque, distorted, evil people, and they're always proud of what they're doing. So why wouldn't they keep track of it, right? Yeah, communist settlements, living spaces, shared spaces. Yeah, and there's a bunch of them all throughout Manitoba. Like, there's a bunch of these. And you can set them up. People have. I know people who have set these up. Like, there are laws on the books in Canada to set up a commune. I mean, we've got to make it better going forward, and the way we do that is by supporting leftist voices. My Patreon's down below. Please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Even donating $1 helps. Even donating $1 helps. Oh. Yeah, you can use the word colony if you like. The anti-vaccine rants from Doug Ford's daughter are now a matter of public interest. I mean, for God's sakes, like, if Dougie is still the premier after this next election, I'm literally just going to be like, what the fuck is wrong with us? Like, I am actually going to be talking about, like, I understand why people voted for Doug Ford in the first place, but, like, this next election, if you're still voting for Doug Ford, like, Ontario provincial election map. Like, I outright will be saying to people, like, okay, see all the blue here? This is where all of the demented evil people live, right? Like, you're voting for blue. You've lost your fucking mind, right? Completely, like, detached from reality, like the most crazed people on earth. And like, the red is not much better, frankly. The red is not much better. And honestly, like, I am to a point where people are gonna be like, well, John, that's a very aggressive thing to say. You're going to alienate people. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Oh no, I'm alienating Skeletor. Like, I don't give a fuck. Have you seen the communes in Israel? They look amazing. Those would be not communes, right? Those are like, what's happening in Israel is like not a commune system. Like, that's more like a reservation system. Oh yes, and please let people know I exist. It would be nice to. It'd be a great Christmas gift to hit 1,000 subscribers. I gotta tell you, probably not gonna happen on Christmas, but it's gonna probably happen before March, I think. Like, anyway, and like, yeah, we're at 1,300 cases, and nothing's fucking happening, right? Too many Canadians are living in ignorance. It's easy to live in that ignorance until reality comes to their doorstep, and each day it's getting more and more doorsteps. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I should be a little bit more forgiving to Canadians because we're also exhausted, right? We're so overwhelmed by this system of capital that is completely duplicitous. Like, it unrepentantly it's inarguable at this point. Like, the system is exhausting us. We don't have time to go. We don't have time to like do the research. Like, I dedicate like large sections of my life to this, and like, my hope is that people lose such an enormous amount of faith in the mainstream media that they start turning to voices like mine, who I believe I'm telling the truth. I'm happy to admit when I'm not. And yeah, we are tired from the evil, of course. Like, it's exhausting to live in this system. Like, here are some just straight facts about some of the most ridiculous aspects of our society. So anthropologists are starting to release reports saying that we work more than medieval peasants did, right? That medieval peasants worked less than we do. Bob Cratchit, right, from the story A Christmas Carol, works for Ebenezer Scrooge. He's supposed to be the emblem of the working poor. Well, if you do all the inflation and you actually figure out how much Bob Cratchit is being paid, because they tell you how much he's being paid in the book, right? He's actually making over $10,000 more than a minimum wage worker in the United States. Like, the epitome of working poor during industrialized capitalism is $10,000 richer than a minimum wage worker in America. Like, this system of capital is a failure. It simply doesn't work. It's exhausting us. It's burning us out. And it's not even allowing us, it's not even making good on its promises. So why do we keep supporting it? Why do we keep going for it? Well, it's just momentum at this point. And it's just that everyone is so fucking exhausted and frayed that they can't even stop to think about it. And the concept of like organizing some sort of revolutionary body, right? Like people, it's more exhausting to continue to endure than to rally together to surround the halls of power and enact revolution. Yeah, which is what's going to have to happen. Yeah. Most voters in Ontario are disgraceful. Buck of beer, sorry to say. Yeah, it's true though. You're right. You're right. And it's like why Jagmeet Singh can't get votes, right? He's got that turban on. And it is that simple, right? Like I've talked to enough people here in Ontario to know, like, why isn't Jagmeet Singh doing better? It's the turban. Straight up. Like just this xenophobic bigotry, like straightforwardly. Kellogg's says it is permanently replacing the 1,400 union members who went on strike. Workers have reported 80-hour work weeks, 16-hour shifts, and forced overtime. Meanwhile, Kellogg's CEO made $11.6 million in 2020. I urge you, don't cross the picket line. That's from Robert Reich. Steadily more and more, becoming further and further to the left as he gets older. Maybe one day he'll finally admit that communism is the way to go. He's not there yet. You guys are awesome and so smart. Well, that's nice to say, Starlight Chakras. What a wonderful thing to say. Isn't that sweet? That's so nice. And again, I'm rather partial to your name, as you can see, right? I've got my chakras in the background here. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm to the point with it, Matthias, where, like, I say it to the NDPers all the time. Like, they are going to have a leadership convention about it. Like, the sad reality about the situation is that they're not going to make any headway. Like, they're just not. Like, and it sucks. Like, it's stupid. Like but if the NDP actually want to have a chance to seize power, what are you talking about? Jack Layton was on the cusp. Jack Layton was on the cusp. The orange sweep, right? Like Jack Layton. If Jack Layton hadn't gotten killed with that cancer gun, he would have won in the next election, because it would have been him versus Stephen Harper, who was sort of universally reviled. Even though he was a better leader than Justin Trudeau, and then a young Justin Trudeau. And people went into the election with Trudeau and Mulcair, Layton's replacement, really, really believing that, like, man, it's a choice between, like, this liberal and this NDPer. And I frankly say it outright and explicitly. The NDP ran a disastrous campaign. They really ran maybe one of the worst campaigns in the history of Canadian campaigning. Like, it was really, really bad. They took someone like Mulcair, who is, if you look at Mulcair in the House, right, you're like, that's the guy that I want to vote for, right? Like, he's pressing people and saying the Canadian people deserve better than this, and like really putting people's gears to it. And instead of giving us this, like, passionate, firebrand, man of the people, working class guy, they gave us essentially Raffi. Like, just fucking, like, Raffi smiling like an idiot, saying dumb shit. Like, dumb shit. Shit that was embarrassing. Well, I mean, and it isn't that he was dull. It was just like, this is a large critique I have of the NDP across the board. Like, hey, there are homeless people. Like, rent is going through the roof. Housing prices are going through the roof. People are genuinely suffering. Like, people are genuinely suffering. And you're walking into the room with like a stupid goddamn grin on your face, acting like everything's super nice and hunky-dory, and with your dumb piano music and all your just like stupid, like non-solutions. Like, they never come forward with like actual solutions while campaigning, right? And the people that you see in the House, they're just gone. Like, they just don't exist on the campaign trail. And I say it over and over and over again, right? There's a fellow who I keep showing on here. I can't remember his name offhand, but like, he's an NDPer and his stuff is great. And I'm like, yeah, and he'll go on the campaign trail and that guy will disappear. We'll never see him. They won't catch it on film. It just won't exist. Yeah, and you can critique Mulcair from a policy position, and you should. Like, Mulcair was a big reason why the party was shifting to the right, right? But like the NDP become just like losers. Like, they campaign to lose. It's pretty obvious, honestly. Like, they campaign to lose, and they're not interested in actually doing anything bold or interesting. They're not interested in like putting themselves out there and being at all dynamic or any of this kind of stuff, right? Like, when it comes time to campaigning, the NDP they're just losers. They look like losers. They campaign like losers, and nobody wants to vote for a loser, right? People want to vote for someone they think is going to fight for them, right? People want to vote for the person they think is going to really throw down, not tolerate bullshit, and actually push an agenda that's actually going to help them. And if you come out grinning like an idiot with a non-campaign that's just sort of like, vote for us, we're NDP, we're the quirky third-party choice, kicky heel piano music, people are going to yawn, and then they're going to vote for the natural ruling party, which is the Liberals. Like, I don't understand why it is that the NDP constantly say, we're going to fight for you, and then show no fight whatsoever on the campaign trail. Like, do you know what the word fight means? Do you understand what fight means? Right? It means that you're going in there to clobber and be clobbered, right? We're talking like Rocky Balboa shit. And like, I just don't believe it. Whenever I see the NDP's stuff on the campaign trail, I'm just like, these people aren't fighters, right? I'm more or less of the opinion of Jagmeet Singh that like, he doesn't actually care to be the prime minister. Like, really, I just don't think he cares to be the prime minister. I think he's happy where he is as the leader of the NDP, and he doesn't really care to be the Prime Minister of Canada. Have a good one, Nanya. Corbyn just got demolished, by the media, anti-Semite accusers. Biggest mistake is he did not kick out Blairites. Yep. Like, clean house. Get rid of these guys, right? Like, the Blairites, I mean, they're fucking war criminals, like, all of them. Like, the Iraq War is as much on Tony Blair as it is on George Bush. Like, what? Go on. Yeah, China seeks first military base on Africa's Atlantic coast. U.S. intelligence finds. Like, we shouldn't really be surprised by this. And I wouldn't be too surprised if this is a misreport, honestly. Like, they're treating it like it's like a military base, and in the end it's going to be like a port. It's going to be like a seaport where ships can go in and get repaired and stuff. And they're reporting it like Chinese warships. Like, yeah, like the ships that the Chinese are using to protect their trade lanes from you, America, right? Right? Like, of course they're going to report it in this way. And of course they're talking to the Biden administration instead of actually going to ask the Chinese themselves. I wonder if they actually do. Yeah, the most significant threat, military useful, blah, 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 right? Like, because it's the Chinese that are pushing for war, right? Like, that's right. Let's see if they even bother talking to anybody from China. At the same time, U.S., China, yeah, the U.S. concern. Like, we know what the U.S. concern is. The U.S. concern is that they'll have a peer competitor in what they call a peer competitor, as opposed to just like a peer. In the world. Like, that's it. Like, oh, we've got to treat this person like, manufacturing consent for a war with China. Yeah. Or like, when we finally start destroying their shipping lanes and start destroying their trade infrastructure, people will be like, yeah, fuck China. It's like, and it's just xenophobia. Like, it's all it is. Like, if you wanted to actually fight this war, like, if you actually want to compete with China, you've got to build. Like, there's no fucking mystery here, right? The Chinese have shown you very clearly that the way to get ahead in the world is actually to build. That's how you actually get ahead in the world. That if all you do is spend all your money on your military so you can go around picking on smaller nations, right? You don't get anywhere. And in fact, you alienate yourself from the rest of the world. You waste your own resources and your own time. Like, there's a reason why I call this a death cult, right? Because it's lost the capacity for reason. It's lost the ability, like, it's caught up in this mass hysteria of like believing that they're constantly under threat, that they're constantly like needing to defend themselves. And it makes total sense because we're so crazed. Like, we're crazed psychopathic murderers, right? And so we assume that everyone else and every other nation is also full of crazed psychopathic murderers, right? Like, every United States president has been like a genocidal maniac. Almost to an individual. Like, every United States president has just like bombed the shit out of small nations and like enslaved their populations. Like, I'm sure that there is like an exception somewhere. I'm sure that there is, like, you could find the one president who didn't bomb anybody. But like, these guys are crazed psychopaths. And so their assumption is that everyone else is too. And then here comes a nation, like, what's China done? Like, who's China bombing? Like, what's China bombing? What's China destroying? What's China doing? Right? Nobody can actually tell me, but I'm supposed to be afraid of them. I'll tell you who I'm more afraid of. I'm more afraid of the guys that every single fucking year bomb the shit out of a new nation. And you never know who they're going to bomb next. You never know what they're going to destroy next. And then these guys are looking at like China, who's building and expanding trade negotiations and like making connections with the rest of the world. And what are they doing here? They're putting up a port. That's what they're doing. Right? And what's the American response? Oh, this is definitely going to be so they can invade us and destroy us. Because they too must be psychopathic murderers like we are. Like, shortly after Mr. Obang, the president, spoke by phone with Chinese President Xi Jinping, after which Beijing put out a statement highlighting that Equatorial Guinea has always regarded China as its most important strategic partner. China helps train and arm the Equatorial Guinean police. How about that? The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs didn't respond to a written request for comment on any basing plans in Equatorial Guinea or anywhere else on Africa's Atlantic coast. Beijing set up its first overseas military base in 2017 in Djibouti on the opposite side of the continent. The former French colony looks onto Bab el-Mandeb Strait, a strategic choke point for shipping traffic transiting the Suez Canal. The Chinese facility has a pier capable of docking an aircraft carrier and nuclear submarines, according to U.S. Africa Command. China doesn't just build a military base like the U.S., said Paul Nantulia, research associate at the Pentagon-funded African Center for Strategic Studies. The Chinese model is very, very different. It combines civilian as well as security elements. So, like, straight out, like, this is a port. Like, they want it to be a port, right? Like, that's what they're doing. But they also understand, like, there's this psychopathic, crazed nightmare creature marching around the globe who feels free to bomb whoever they want, whenever they want, right? So, like, yeah, you have to build security elements. Like, you have to, right? Like, walk softly and carry a big stick. Like, if America wasn't walking around constantly holding, like, this gun, like, imagine you were in a room, like a hall, right? And every person in the hall represented, like, a country, right? And so you're all talking to one another, trying to make deals and trying to send stuff around. And then in walks, Brittany, the representative or Erica, the representative for America, and she's standing there with a fucking AR-15 in one hand, got like a grenade belt going around, and anytime she's talking to you, she's constantly like fingering her gun, right? Like constantly like petting it, and like all this kind of stuff. And her kids are like emaciated, poverty-stricken, like living in the streets, right? And every year she shows up, her kids are more beleaguered, more exhausted, more tired, and her guns are bigger. Like, that's what you're experiencing if you're outside of America. Yeah, I'm gonna take some security provisions to ensure that, like, this person can't just walk over and blow my shit up. Yeah, for sure. Oh, and then even worse than that, right? So imagine, like, Brittany's in the room with her, Erica's in the... I call her Erica because then I get to say, like, she says, I'm Erica, right? So it's more America, right? USA. Anyway. And she's, like, walking around. She's got this fucking giant bazooka-style gun. And every so often, she walks up to some random person in the room and just shoots the shit out of them. Just... and, like, steals their wallet. Yeah. I'm gonna defend myself. I'm gonna have a weapon myself, right? If this crazed lunatic comes into the hall and just guns people down, right? And right now, like, what it's doing right now. So imagine, like, there's one of the people in the room is named China, right? It's just like a beautiful woman wearing like a beautiful, beautiful ancient Chinese dress, right? And right now, America, like Erica, she's got like her cowboy hat on, her stupid aviator glasses. She's wearing like a tube top American flag kind of thing with like jean skirt, cowboy boots, enormous gun. And she's just like right up on China, like nose to nose, just being like, what, you think you're big? You think you're tough? You think you can fucking handle? And China's just like looking at her. That's it. That's the conversation that's going on right now. Like, and if China like pulls out like a tiny little weapon, just like the smallest little tiniest, like a Derringer, like a little 2-piece, like, and if China even reveals that they have such a thing on their person, America's like, well, look who's got a gun. Like, what the fuck? I'm way behind, but totally agree about 40-man raids. Those things were way too big for their own good. Yeah, oddity, dude. Like, 40-man raids ruined the game for me. They ruined them. Like, and they were completely unnecessary. It was completely unnecessary to have 40 men. Why? Like, so pointless. Do the same content, but like 5 man. Like, that was great. That's when that game was its best. That's when that game was its best. But once again, capitalism ruins everything, right? Like, that's what it comes down to. It's just capitalism ruins it. Video games, man. I feel like we're just now scratching the surface of what video games can actually accomplish. Like, we're creating like digital hallucinatory spaces where you can live as an alternative person, right? Like, I think it would be really cool. South Park released a game called The Stick of Truth. And in it, they had a joke right at the beginning where you set the difficulty setting at the beginning, and the difficulty setting was literally changed your color. So easy was white, and the farther you went into hard, the blacker you got, right? Which is a great joke. And I looked it up and I was like, did this actually have a change to the way the game played? And they were going to change the gameplay. They were going to make it so that if you were black, some people wouldn't deal with you, right? They wouldn't interact with you. Or if they did, it would be, so you couldn't get certain resources, that you would get less money from people, like that kind of thing. And they cop out on it, though, right at the 0 hour. They're just like, no, that's fine. Like, it's just a joke. Like, let's the gameplay experience. I would absolutely love if somebody made a game exactly like this. That, like, make like a short, like, hour-long experience. So just like a very narrow, very short experience, right? Where you play it, where you're supposed to play it multiple times, right? And set it like this, so that, like, if you're a white dude, right, you walk into places and people are just like treating you nicely with respect and all this kind of stuff. The cops will drive by and not bother you, right? Like, you're just a white dude living in the world, and then make it so that at some point there's like a reset, and then you're a black guy, and then instead those cops drive by and then they stop you, right? And they harass you and they cause you problems, right? Maybe literally steal money from you, which is legal for cops to do. Like, you go into like a shop, and maybe the shopkeeper has increased his prices on you, or is constantly like eyeing you up and causing you problems, and like change the discourse, right? So when you're a white dude, everybody's like, thanks, sir. Yeah, have a good day, right? But when you're a black guy, they're like, hey, hurry up, get out of here, right? Like, I think that could be a very profound experience for lots of people. I think there's lots of people who would, like, because one of the things that video games really offers is it offers an easy way to experience life in someone else's shoes. It's what books do, right? But books also require a certain level of actual engagement, right? Actual intellectual engagement. Whereas video games are sort of the opposite. That's my bug snoring, you bet. Like, books require you to actually, like, engage your inner voice and allow a new voice to exist within your brain space, which is so important. Like, that's the reason why people who read are more empathetic and compassionate and more intelligent, because they have allowed a new voice to exist in their head, a voice that is not their own, right? Forget about, like, the content of it. That's why the new push for reading and teaching kids about reading is just get them reading. Like, I remember when I was growing up, if you read comic books, there was like this like kind of sniff about it. It was just kind of like, meh. But now people are seeing that, like, no, like, anything is good. Anything is good. Get any other alternative voice in this person's head. so that they have the experience of something outside of their own voice living in their head, right? It's so crucial and important. And video games do a similar thing, but instead of it replacing the voice in your head, it kind of shuts the voice in your head down. Like the voice in your head kind of is pushed into the back. So it's not a replacement, it's a shutdown. And I'm kind of on the fence about whether or not that's good or not. And like, does that allow video games to have a similar impact to books? And it kind of puts them in between books and movies, right? Movies are like a real like wash over kind of experience that can be profound, right? Like you can watch a film and it can change the way you view the world. Like it really can. I mean, and we know that just from a strict like propaganda kind of level. And do video games have a similar sort of a thing, right? Is there a similar profound you're going to die of chronic boredom? Hope I'm not boring you, Barnabas. Oh no. Kierkegaard said that the root of all evil was boredom. That it's that idle hands are the devil's workplace, that kind of stuff. I view it a little bit differently, which is like, I think people should be bored. I think we need more boredom in the world. Because it's from boredom that action takes place. People do all kinds of stuff. And you just need to kind of harness that boredom and turn it into something interesting. But you got to be bored first. You got to be bored first. And yeah, the world is so fucking boring right now. Like, it's so goddamn tedious and boring being alive in this world. Especially as we go into winter. Can't even, like, go outside, really. Yeah. I wonder what kind of crazy thing is going to come next. Like, I feel like there's going to be some, like, crazy, like, technology that comes out. Because I've been able to sort of stay with all of this technology. Like, I haven't been on board with all of it, but, like, I've understood it. I am waiting for the piece of technology that comes out that I am just like, what is this even? Like, what am I even looking at? Like, I don't understand it. I don't understand what I'm connecting with. I started to get really, like, I felt like a super old man with Snapchat. Someone described Snapchat to me, and I literally was like, oh, this is for, like, sending nude pics. Like, that's what this is. You're absolutely, like... Oh, you send somebody a picture, and then it deletes itself. Yeah, okay. Like, what do you think this is for? So here's a new video that's got released. Donald Trump hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. There's nothing much to it. It's just Donald Trump at a party. Newly discovered video of Trump and Epstein. Like, Donald Trump needs to get fucking arrested, dude. Like, he's already gotten, like, completely outed. Like, we have testimonial saying that, like, when I was 14, Donald Trump had sex with me, was introduced by... Anyway. That shit's not gonna happen. The next big thing is going to be biorobots. Ugh, biorobots. Biorobots. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. It's too much. It's too much. I just, like... I do wonder about, like... Because it's going to happen. Some wealthy guy is going to, like, have a limb removed in order to replace it with a robot arm. And I don't mean, like, he got into an accident and then he replaces, like, his gimpy limb with a robot arm. I mean, he's going to take his perfectly fine, completely normal, and he's going to elect to replace it with a robot arm. Like, that's coming. And it raises an interesting question of, like, is that good? Is that okay? Like, can we do that? Is that fine? And you start to get into this, like, cyberware kind of conversation of, like, can I have robotics installed in my head? Like, can the internet become a built-in experience? Can I live in such a way that I am completely connected to the internet? Can Alexa be part of my consciousness? Right? All that kind of stuff. Transhumanism's on the way for sure. For sure. And I'm of two minds. I gotta tell you, I'm of two minds when it comes to it. On the one hand, he's gonna arm it with a gun blade. If he's cool, fuck yeah. Like, I'm of two minds about it, because on the one hand, like, these smartphones that we have are already kind of cybernetic, right? They're already kind of cyborg-esque, right? Like, we're carrying around like a massive tool. Like, this is an enormous tool that we have at our disposal, and we just have at our fingertips. You can take a picture, do a recording, send any piece of information you like anywhere you like at any time, and get any information you like at any time, right? And we basically spend most of our time using it for, like, cat videos. But when you actually, like, utilize it, right, it's actually extremely powerful. And would it be so terrible? Would it be so terrible if, like, this smartphone was just, like, in my arm, right? If, like, there was, like, my arm was just part of that, and I could just, like, interact with my arm, or, like, interact with my arm? Would that be so terrible? You know? Like, is it so bad, the idea that, like, we have an intrinsic connection to the internet, or an intrinsic, like, built-in experience? Like, I don't know. Like, that's what it is. Like, I don't know. And, like, couldn't that be argued that it's just the next stage of human evolution and human development? That, like, the technologies that we make eventually merge with us, and that's part of who we are as humans? Our ability to use tools, as well as our ability to discuss and understand abstract thoughts, really merging with our biological structure in a more complete way. Is that bad? What will it do to us? I'm of the mind that transhumanism is the only way humans can evolve any further. We've eliminated any outside force that could force biological evolution. I mean, I disagree with that. I think we have eliminated certain forces that could force biological evolution. Like, there are forces that impact us in large and significant ways that we essentially ignore. Like, we do not admit. And the people who do admit are seen as kind of, like, charming. Like, here's a real clean example of what I'm talking about. So, like, the moon, right? The moon is responsible for tides. Like, it changes the ocean itself, right? and yet we seem to not really buy into the idea that the moon would also have an impact on us, right? That it can move a body of water as large as the ocean, but it won't affect creatures. And, like, that gets into, like, astrology territory, right? And once you're in astrology territory, most people, like, people will delve into it for fun, but I haven't really met anybody who is like, no, astrology, right? Like, that's a thing we need to pay attention to. And I mean, I feel like we're always in an evolutionary, we're always evolving, right? And because the only thing that really matters as far as evolution is concerned is reproduction, right? Like, nothing else matters. So, like, what is it that allows you to reproduce most effectively? That's the only thing evolution gives a shit about at all. And so it's completely possible that, like, the Earth is just populated by shitty rich people. We need a political evolution before there can be a human one, in my opinion. I mean, I just don't think... Like, I really don't care about the conversation of human evolution, right? I actually don't. Like, I feel like we've got all of the tools we need. Like, we've got all the tools in front of us. We've got everything we need. We just are falling for lots of traps. And in many ways are just refusing to acknowledge our true place in the universe. Like, we're refusing to acknowledge, like, there are forces that are much larger than we are and much grander. And there are rules. There are obvious rules, like obvious ones that you have to follow. Like, do we know why the rules are there? No. But there they are, all the same. And if you don't, there are pretty massive consequences. And those consequences are enacted by the energy that, or the forces that are larger than we are, that we refuse to acknowledge the power of. Like, I don't think it's going to take, like, an evolution to see these things as the truth. If anything, it's just going to take, like, us acknowledging what we are and where we are and who we are. But we're not interested in that. We're interested in baubles and doodads and gadgets, little fleeting distractionary things, right? And, like, no, my life. I saw a meme yesterday. It was a sad, depressed Borat voice. My life. Like, I feel like if what was happening to, like, the ancient Greeks, right, or the ancient Egyptians, they'd be able to put it together. They'd be able to figure out what was going on, right? We're not more evolved than they are. Like, we're not a better species than they were. We've just managed to unlock oil. Oil's the game changer. And, like, we don't know what to do with it. It's been this, like, Pandora's box sort of effect. Like, it's taken everything over. It's created a hysteria. And it's just, everything's got to be about oil. Everything has to be about it. And in its own way, like, it's like we've become possessed by the undead, right? That, like, we dredged up the dead from their slumber, and not only have they possessed us and taken over our drive, it's also punishing us by taking to the atmosphere. It's very epic. It's very epic. It's got a very, like, heavy metal vibe about it. You think World War III will start over Taiwan or something else? I mean, the fact that we have these nuclear bombs means that it can happen at any time for any reason. It's most likely accidental. Like, that's the thing that I think people don't really consider. Is that the most likely way for World War III to start is accidentally. Like, these bombs, our destructive capability is incredible. Like, really, it's like it's insane how much destruction we can levy in very short order. And, like, this idea that we have full control over these bombs and these missiles and all this kind of stuff, like, it's totally false. Like, it's total bullshit. We can absolutely have one of these things just go off, right? Like, that to me seems to be the most likely thing to happen. Because, like, we're not very intelligent as a people. Like, we're not a very, like, we're clever. Like, we're resourceful. Don't get me wrong. But we're not very wise, right? And we're so short-sighted, right? Like, a lot of these nukes that we have walking around are, like, literally in facilities that were built in the 60s and, like, the 50s, you know? And, like, we're passing that on from one generation to the next and one generation to the next. It's like... It's not hard to draw up like a Fallout kind of narrative where you're like, yep, there's the nuclear bomb outside of town right over there. Nobody knows how to get in the facility anymore, right? Like there's like lost knowledge happens, right? And like, in my view, it really is like, it's an inevitability that if you create all of this weaponry and you just leave it around, right? Well, generations down the pipe, people are going to be like re-exploring some facility and they're literally going to be like, oh, fuck, there's a nuclear bomb in here that we just lost track of, right? Like, that's how humanity actually works. Like, we don't do a very good job, and especially in this culture. Like, we don't plan. We don't make a plan. And nor do we have any, like, we don't really care about, like, the next generation. Like, this culture doesn't give a fuck about what's going to happen to our kids. We don't care at all. Like, so, like, it's an inevitability that some of this weaponry and some of this bullshit just gets lost. It's just how we are. And the fusion story is, there's interest there. Yeah. Both fission and fusion. Like, it feels like we're in a cusp kind of a moment, that there's something cool that's about to happen with it. Could be cool. Could be cool. Okay, guys. Once again, we've made it to the end. Hopefully, I'll actually go to sleep tonight. Actually get a good night's sleep. We'll see about that. Hope to see you tomorrow. Always remember, you are a quantum being standing around in quantum energy. That means you are just as valid as these fucking billionaires who are spending hundreds of billions of dollars trying to pretend like you're not. Don't let them. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're gonna need it.